ever wondered why some Disney characters don't have their own song? As a professional musical theater performer and songwriter, I spend countless hours analyzing songs, but what keeps me up at night is when there isn't a song. I'll be giving my verdict on every songless Disney character in the Disney Princess franchise. Did this character deserve their own solo, or did they do us all a favor by keeping quiet? Whether you're a songwriter or storyteller or curious audience member, not only is this a fun topic to argue about in the comment section, but it is also invaluable for us to understand why we yearn for some characters to sing and then don't even notice when others don't sing. By studying these cases, we can start to pinpoint when the audience walks away feeling satisfied versus when they feel like something was missing, and why. If I decide a character should have a song, what type of song would I create for them, and how do I think this would elevate the storytelling and also facilitate a deeper connection to us? And if I don't think that they should have a song, what do I think went into Disney making that decision, and why do I think that ultimately that was the stronger choice? Good day, everybody. It is Calxiyn here, ready to nerd out on Calxiyn Cares Too Much about something that maybe only I care about, but I'm gonna make you care. I'm surprised that nobody's talked about this online or has ever made a video about this, at least as far as I can tell. And this video idea was just so funny to me because usually I'm here to analyze an individual song and tell you what the secret songwriting techniques are and, you know, what makes it a complete and utter failure versus a true masterpiece. But like instead, we're talking about the absence of a song. Like we're talking about songs that don't exist. And I think that's hilarious. If you guys already really like this concept, make sure to leave a comment telling me what movie you would like to see in another part of this, because we're only focusing on the Disney princesses today, and then also Frozen. I just tossed Frozen in there because I thought it made sense. So if you're wondering about The Lion King or Hunchback or Hercules or something, that's why they are not here. They will be in another video, so make sure to tell me which ones you guys want to see after this set. This video is not a tier list like having S, A, B, C, D, E, F, right, etc. This video is more of a spectrum. And on one end of the spectrum, we have, I don't think this movie needed another song, therefore, even if a character doesn't sing, I don't think that they needed to. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have this movie definitely needed a song from this character, and the fact that we didn't get one really hurts the narrative. We were robbed. And in between are the I long and yearn for this song, but it isn't as narratively dire on what's on this side here. To talk about what's missing, we need to establish what we usually have in a Disney movie musical. And this is the opening number, the I want song, reprises of various things, a villain song, a love song if there's a love story, production numbers, a climax song, and a finale. There are many more types of songs in the world of musical theater, but live stage musicals often create filler songs when there's a set change or when the leads change costuming or makeup. Like there's a classic old man song where the old man of the musical just stands there all alone and sings about his feelings, and you're kind of like, why are we here? Or people may use it as a time like, let's get up and go to the bathroom. They have a utility purpose. They weren't necessarily made to move the story along. But in animation, especially when we're looking at these really old movies, they did not have time to fuck around, right? And so we don't really have filler songs. They didn't have a penny to spare or the time to spare. Does a Disney song need to have all these songs to be good? No. But the reason why these are staples of musical theater is because we hold clarity and audience satisfaction above all else. You can't make the audience feel something without lyrical and musical clarity, and so these numbers are usually key to fulfilling that objective. You'll notice as we go through the list that there is a direct link in between the audience not understanding a character or a plot point, and then also that character not having a song, because that clarity wasn't there. At the same time, though, there are specific instances where I think that adding a song would actually create more confusion, would actually take the clarity away. It would be less satisfying for the audience, and so sometimes no song is for the best. Which is a nice segue into number 12 on our list, which is Moana. I don't want to hear about whether you love Lin-Manuel Miranda or you hate him. I think what's fantastic about Moana is that all the songs in the movie serve her and are evenly paced. A lot of the older Disney movies take the approach of shove all the songs in the front, and you'll notice, like, when the exciting climax happens, the movie just forgets that it's a musical. Beauty and the Beast, for example, avoids this by having the mob song, but The Little Mermaid, by comparison, doesn't have a battle song during the wedding or during the fight against Ursula or anything like that. And usually that sort of thing is addressed in the Broadway version of the old Disney movie musicals, but Moana avoids this pacing issue entirely. Moana also doesn't have moments which I feel like were a waste of time. And this is where I reveal some deep Calxiyn lore, okay? I hate Les Passants. I hate the chef song in The Little Mermaid. This song has absolutely no business being in this movie. It only serves to make a meal out of the comedic sidekickness of Sebastian getting into trouble. Like, this song could be cut from the movie and nothing of value was lost, and it annoys me because that time could have been better used somewhere else, which we'll talk about later. That's what I'm talking about when I say that everything in Moana serves Moana. There's not any song that I'm like, why the fuck are you here? In terms of adding a song, the only thing that I considered was that moment that Maui and Moana have on the boat after Tamatoa, like when Maui is delivering his backstory exposition, basically. You could have had a reprise where Maui sings it instead of explaining that his parents abandoned him when he's a baby and have him open up to Moana that way. The narrative thread that connects Maui and Moana is the theme of parental expectations, the heavy burden that they share with wanting to prove that they are good enough, that they are worthy, that they are more than their parents thought that they were, and also finding their own place in the world. But I actually think that not singing here could have some narrative significance if you take Maui's song as before being this performance or a show, like to cover up his insecurities and his wrongdoings and all of that stuff. You're Welcome was just sort of a mask that he puts on. Now, when he's talking to Moana very sincerely and quietly, like, that's the real Maui. And so I think a lack of song shows the contrast between, like, performance Maui and then also the real Maui. But this still is a musical, and it wouldn't sit right with me if a lack of singing is to convey sincerity. Like, singing should be sincere, and I feel like that this same effect could have been conveyed by having lyrical and musical sincerity. Like, if you made a song that's the complete opposite of You're Welcome in terms of the composition and the lyrics, it's very simple, it's very grounded, it's down to earth, you could do that too. You guys can clown on me if I'm wrong, but you guys may not know this. There is going to be a Moana show on Disney Cruise Line, right? And so I feel like I'm 80% sure Calxiyn Gift of Prophecy striking again. I feel like that they may have a song here. The only other thing I could see happening is a You're Welcome reprise, but it's like a conflict song. It's when Maui and Moana get into that fight and then Maui storms off and goes away and pretends like he's leaving forever, but obviously he comes back. Like, I feel like it would be really funny to get this song where Maui's like, thanks a lot, and Moana's like, you're welcome, but in like angry button, and I think that that would be really fun. But I also don't think that that's necessary because this moment in the movie happens so quickly anyhow. So here's the verdict. Because Moana covers every category so well, I don't feel like anything was missing, and I don't yearn for what could have been. I feel satisfied by how the movie resolved. I don't feel like any character was missing story or characterization that a song could have fixed, and I just feel like every song was truly carefully crafted to contribute to the story. We started with the newest Disney princess musical, but now we're going all the way back to the oldest. Number 11 is Snow White. Now, there's something I need to address as we talk about Snow White, Cinderella, and Sleeping Beauty. It's not that these films aren't musicals, but movies from this era don't exactly fully commit to the idea of a Broadway show, at least not as we understand the golden age, and especially not modern musicals today. This is definitely a hot take, but let me cook. In a musical, songs are used to advance the plot of the show and give us insight into the characters' deepest desires and vulnerabilities, generally without the characters being aware that they are singing. Some of you have already caught on to this, but 99% of the time in those old movies, characters are singing in universe. Like, the songs are diegetic. Other people can hear them, and that influences who gets a song. For princesses, they sing to themselves while working or as a form of human to animal sort of communication. And if other people stumble upon them, like the princes, they hear them singing. The seven dwarfs sing what is basically a sea shanty, but for the mines. You have the kings in Sleeping Beauty singing a drinking song. Lady Tremaine and the stepsisters are actually singing on the piano like they're practicing a real song that they are learning in universe. When we talk about Snow White, her songs are I want songs as we understand them today, but back in this time, Disney seemed reluctant to have characters sing for like no reason, or to only reserve songs to characters who can be like silly. The characters have to be willing to share their deepest vulnerabilities knowingly, which means that it's usually gonna be like a good character like Snow White, or silly characters like the mice in Cinderella, or when someone is inebriated and drunk. You can have Frollo sing in Hunchback because he isn't aware that he's breaking out in a song, but the evil queen will never sing because if we follow the self-imposed narrative rule to its logical conclusion, it means that characters who are strict or stuffy aren't going to sing. All that being said, let's look at the magic mirror, the huntsman, and most importantly, the evil queen. Do these characters need a song? With the magic mirror, the only thing I could see him doing is a more traditional opening number with him serving as the narrator, kind of like Into the Woods. But I feel like that doesn't really work here because the reason why that's necessary in Into the Woods is because you have all these characters and they all want something. Like, they are the main character of their own story. And so you need the narrator in order to facilitate the connection between them and to make sure that the audience doesn't get confused and all that stuff. But Snow White doesn't have a massive cast, and we only have two characters that want something, Snow White, the evil queen. I guess the prince kind of wants something, but I feel like that he wants something by accident. Like, we don't think that he's searching for a wife. We think that he just heard Snow White one day and he was like, oh my god, I'm in love with you. Like, things happen to him. He just gets roped into the conflict. The characters that want to break free from the status quo are Snow White and the evil queen. For the huntsman, I don't think he's important enough to require some sort of insight into his personal tortured angst. If I'm thinking about other characters who are kind of similar to the huntsman, like Gleb and Anastasia, the only reason why there's a song that has that conflict between duty and morals and all that stuff, like the only reason why we spend so much time on him as a character is because he's the main antagonist. In Snow White, the huntsman cracks under pressure in 3 seconds anyway, and I think his immediate crumbling contributes to the story more than a 3-minute song would. If he had a song debating what to do, it would ruin the point and hurt the narrative because it would give the audience the impression that he needed a lot of convincing, right? That this was really a struggle for him. But the point is, he doesn't need to be convinced. He's not conflicted. As soon as he sees Snow White, he sees that she is so good and kind and a child that he can't bear to do something so evil as to kill her for, like, literally no reason. So he disobeys his queen and risks his life to save her. So this leaves us with the evil queen, and I love a good villain number, so this may surprise a lot of you, but I'm actually gonna say no, she does not need a song. Even though villain songs are arguably some of Disney's most iconic numbers, the problem with the evil queen is I just don't see the use case to include one. Songs always have a scene partner, and you can divide this into public, semi-private, and private. For public, this tends to be minions or the villain's sidekick. You're either bragging about the thing that you are going to do, or you are reprimanding them. And similarly, you can also have to the public, like, to the entire kingdom, this is my evil deed that I'm doing for the day. And then with semi-private, you have the hero that the villain is trying to convince of something. So it's not a wide song to the general public, it's just like you and one other person. And then when the villain is alone or in private, it is to their other self, as we call it as actors, or God. So that being said, you can't really give the evil queen a song like Scar has or like Radcliffe has, where we're rallying the troops sort of song, we're rallying the minions, because she doesn't have any. You can't give her an Ursula or Dr. Facilier-like song because Snow White doesn't need that much convincing as Naveen or Ariel does, and Snow White is just too trusting. And you can't even give her a Frollo song because Frollo is singing because he's at least like a dash morally conflicted about all this. Like, he's turning to Mother Mary and God because he knows what he's experiencing is a sin. It's just about what to do about that sin, right? And he picks the evil thing to do about it. But like, the evil queen does not give a fuck, right? She has absolutely no qualms about what she's doing, so why would she sing to herself? Because of how this movie operates, the evil queen singing seems very out of character and goes against her controlled behavior. I feel like the only way to add a song would be by giving her a more sympathetic or complex motivation, right? But I feel like that makes her a worse character in this case. Like, what is terrifying about the evil queen? Is she really is just that evil. She is that cruel, that vain, that shallow that she would kill her own stepdaughter. So if you give her some tragic backstory, like, what are we really doing here? That just doesn't work. So, my verdict, I don't walk away from Snow White wishing for another song. I feel satisfied with how all the songs that are included and do exist contribute to the narrative, and I think that adding songs could actually bog it down like what I said about the Huntsman. And that's an important lesson for all of us to learn as storytellers. More is not always better. Number 10 is Cinderella, and when we talk about characters that technically don't sing, you could argue that it's the kingdom, the king, the duke, sort of the prince in terms of him having his own solo, and then of course Lady Tremaine and the stepsisters. Unlike Snow White, Cinderella does have a more concrete opening number in terms of the song that plays during the opening credits of the movie, and this establishes the thesis and the thematic questions that will be answered through going on this journey very well. But like I said, I think in terms of Snow White, I'm Wishing does the same thing. It's just an individual character instead of the course. In theory, you could have a kingdom-wide musical number, though, to replace this opening credits song. But the only way that this makes sense to me is if we start with the invitation from the prince. And I think that's actually a weaker narrative choice. If we had a kingdom-wide opening number like Belle, we'd be able to establish the town getting excited about the ball, Cinderella wanting to go to the ball, the stepsisters and Lady Tremaine singing about their plans to grab the prince's attention, the prince's opinion about the ball and what he wants in a true love, the duke and the king's hopes for the prince to get married, etc. But I feel like Cinderella makes a stronger narrative choice when you think about how intimately and enclosed it starts in Cinderella's world, and that world being just her house. By starting very isolated, it reinforces the abuse Cinderella has suffered and how she's all alone, and the scope of her world is just what she can see from the window, right? And a kingdom-wide number, I think, would add too much joy immediately and undermine all that. This movie needs to start in the status quo, in Cinderella's regular, terrible life first, and then slowly introduce the idea that there may be a chance for change. And if you start with the excitement and the ball and everything like that, you don't get to live in the world that Cinderella has been living in and then see the chance to break out of it. If we're already starting at like, oh, there may be a chance to leave point, we don't get to sit in what her life is. In terms of the king and the duke, I can really only see them getting a song if Cinderella and the prince are equal protagonists like they are in Twice Charmed. Like, in theory, I could give them a "you're forced to get married" sort of number, and in my head it would be like manipulative a little bit, like they would be letting the prince think that he's in charge, and it's that sort of situation where the king and the duke are conspiring and guiding the prince to come to the conclusion to host the ball himself, but that's what they wanted anyway. Like, son, if you're saying that you want to find your true love and you will not tolerate an arranged marriage, why not host a ball where you can meet the girls yourself and make that decision, which is what I secretly planned all along. The reason why I don't think that we need this, though, is found in the first sentence that I said. If Cinderella and the prince are equal protagonists, but they're not. We don't follow his point of view at all. He's not important. Like, he only matters in relation to Cinderella. He is her love interest. He is not an equal protagonist. Now, apparently, there was a cut song for the prince the next day after Cinderella ran away from the ball, I guess, but with the narrative as it's currently constructed, I feel like that there's no reason to have it, and I'm glad that they cut it. Musical theater songs need to exist because of conflict, and what's interesting about Cinderella, I think, is that every eligible maiden from the kingdom is allowed to attend the ball. It's not like it's like princesses only or something. The only reason I could see for having the prince sing about how much he loves the girl from the ball in terms of creating a conflict is because they realize that the girl from the ball is a peasant and the king doesn't approve of that. So you start the song by, "Son, I can't let you marry that girl," and then the prince is like, "But that's the girl I met at the ball. That's the girl I fell in love with. Please, dad, let me do what I want." But like in the movie, there is no conflict. The prince is not prevented from searching for Cinderella in any way. And so why, after the love song happens, do we need a whole other song about the prince telling us how much he loves her? That's what This Is Love is about. Like, we know that he loves her already. And so I don't think that we need this. Okay, so a little bit of a sidebar about cut songs, and if you guys want, I could do a video on this song just by itself individually, but there is a song that was cut from Cinderella where she sings about her mother's dress. I believe it's called "The Dress That My Mother Wore," and I do feel like this would have added depth to the narrative and would have created some clarity since people really understand the point of Cinderella. Maybe it's just my hatred of the animal songs in these movies, but like, we don't really need the mice song, especially over this, because we know that this dress is sentimental to Cinderella because it's her mother's, right? Like, that's just common sense, right? That's something that belonged to her dead mother would mean a lot to her. But what this song explains is that this dress is a representation of hope and a representation of her parents' true love. And so in wearing the dress that her mother wore when her mother found true love, Cinderella is expressing how she longs for someone to care about her. She wants a home, a family, like her mother had before she died. She doesn't care that the prince is the prince. She isn't trying to be rescued by a man. She just wants to have fun without anybody judging her for once and then have a chance at finding love. And the song about the dress showcases how lonely Cinderella's life truly is because she's never experienced a story like her parents' love story. This is what gets me really pissed off about Cinderella discourse, like, oh, well, she was rescued by a man and all of that stuff. Like, it would be different if the plotline was, I want to be free and open my own dress store. I want to be free to travel the world and sing. Like, it would be different if that was the plot and then she ended up with a man. But she wants home, love, family, to quote Anastasia. Like, you need another person for that. What is it that people do not understand about Cinderella and just how human relationships work in general that you cannot girl boss your way out of being lonely? You fundamentally need another person for that. So anyway, when the dress is ruined, it would have punctuated that point. Not just how sad it is for Cinderella to lose that last remnant of her family, of her mother, but the dress being destroyed is a physical metaphor for Lady Tremaine wanting to ruin Cinderella's chance at happiness. And the movie does do this in the script, like, even if stupid people don't know that, I know that, right? But musicals have songs in order to make things like that stronger. So I do really wish that they had made a song here, not just to avoid, like, discourse, that's a bad reason to have it, but just for the sake of that continued clarity and making that emotional point, I feel like a song would have helped. There is one place I could see a song happening, and that's the scene where Lady Tremaine hears about the prince. She's trying to get the stepsisters out of bed, trying to get Cinderella to help get them ready, and Cinderella just drops everything, and she's like, oh, I can't see the prince like this, and she sort of daydream wanders up the stairs, and obviously Lady Tremaine locks her in. I don't think a song is 100% necessary here, and I don't exactly have a deep yearning for this song either, which is why it's so low on the list, but I could imagine one, and that's at least different than Snow White, right, where I couldn't imagine her singing at all, period. It's not possible. This, at least, I have an inkling of what I would do. We could have a This Is Love, A Dream Is a Wish Your Heart Makes reprise hybrid situation where Lady Tremaine crushes Cinderella's dreams, and she sings, a dream is just a wish your heart makes. It's pointless, a meaningless flight of fancy. Your dreams are never going to come true. So it's throwing back Cinderella's song right back in her face. And in the canon of the movie, you have the evil A Dream Is a Wish Your Heart Makes leitmotif playing right here. So my verdict is, yes, the movie is fine without it, but I could fuck with adding a little something here. I would love to see somebody write lyrics for that. I mean, I guess I could do it. I guess it could be me. But I'm thinking of Lydia the Bard. This seems like a job for Lydia the Bard. I feel like she could write the Lady Tremaine song that I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? Number 9 is Tangled, which is my favorite Disney princess movie, and it's extremely tight when it comes to the songs. We are only missing a kingdom-wide number that includes the king and queen and a solo from Flynn. On Disney Cruise Line, they actually added an opening number which has the queen and king, the kingdom, and then narrator Flynn, right? When he's like, this is how I died. He's the one who's doing the narration and starts the song. If I was in charge of a Broadway version, I do want something like that, but I don't know if I completely like Flower of Gold. Like, I like the idea of it, but I'd rather have this be When Will My Life Begin, and then it's just for everybody, because I think that's a stronger thesis for the movie compared to Flower of Gold. I think When Will My Life Begin works better because it's the thesis for the movie. That is what the movie is about. So we can start with the king and queen. Maybe they're holding their daughter. Their lives are beginning with their newborn daughter. And then you have Mother Gothel stealing Rapunzel. My life is beginning again because I have my Flower of Gold back, if you want to incorporate that a little. Then we can move forward forward in time and have the kingdom singing about when Rapunzel will return, when their lives with the princess will begin, and that would have more of a focus on the king and queen. I think, like, obviously the people do care, but the focus is more on, like, when will the king and queen finally get their daughter back? And that's something that everybody in the kingdom is wondering as well, as they're having this festival for her. When will their lives begin? When will they get the happily ever after? And then we can transition all the way to Flynn. He's stolen the crown, has it in his hands, and he is singing, "My life is finally beginning because I stole the crown. I'm gonna pawn it off. I'm gonna be on my island well rested and alone and whatever else he wants." And so I think that that brings us full circle. Flynn finishes off the song, and then the chase and everything. And then eventually we circle back to Rapunzel singing her part as it is in the movie. With Cinderella, the idea of a kingdom-wide number wouldn't set the tone properly. But When Will My Life Begin is already hopeful. Like, all we're doing is showing how everybody's dreams and how their hopes are connected. And I don't think that that would negatively impact the story. I think that that's the thing that connects them all together, right? And so for the stage, I think it would be fun. I kind of want to write something like this. Write a version with the When Will My Life Begin that functions how I said. But I also won't die on the hill that Tangled needs this. And so that said, we only are really looking at Flynn. The thing that I'm thinking about is mostly like Broadway cast. You need to introduce the entire cast on Broadway, so in a Broadway version, a song like this would be interesting. But for a movie that has different framing, I think what we have is fine. I don't hate Flynn Rider, Wanted Man, but I also don't like it, and so I don't want a song either about Flynn Rider or sung by Flynn Rider right here. I feel like it kind of hurts the pacing. We're stopping the chase for the guards to sing about, like, Flynn Rider, and some random ladies come in and sing about how cool he is. Anyway, I just don't like that they put that song there. I think that they should have put a Flynn song somewhere else, and I don't know why they decided to go with something that's not even very sincere with Flynn's character, because we already get the impression of his lack of sincerity, so what is the point? Where I would want him to have something is during the kingdom dance, where he realizes that he is in love with Rapunzel. And this is totally Everything to Win from Anastasia. That is the entire vibe. It is basically like Dimitri and Flynn are like the same character in a different font. Speaking of Anastasia, I could have also fucked with, like, Flynn Rider having a My Petersburg, but instead he's singing about his backstory after they get out of, like, the cave and Rapunzel heals his hand and everything. That's the other place where I could see one. The best place, in my opinion, to put a Flynn Rider song is after Sorry Boys I Don't Sing, not before, like, Flynn Rider Wanted Man. It's because it reinforces that Flynn only feels vulnerable enough or compelled enough to sing because he's falling in love with Rapunzel. Like, he's not singing under duress anymore. I think the best place to put something like that is after she saves his life, because that's when he starts to genuinely open up, but before I See the Light. And out of these two things, like the My Petersburg-like song and then Everything to Win, I do lean more in the direction of Everything to Win, just because I think that has more narrative impact. I don't really need a full Flynn backstory song. I just think that it would be fun because I personally like to sing songs like that. I wish I could play Dimitri. Unfortunately, there may be a couple problems with that. I don't think that it would take I See the Light's impact away because it has a different purpose. I See the Light is Flynn asserting that his dream has changed, but a song during the kingdom dance would function a lot like the Anastasia song. I should be glad this is almost done. I'm not one for parties and all this nonsense, this fanfare and celebration. I like to lay low. I don't like to come out like this, and so I should be glad we're almost done. She'll get what she wants. I get the crown. We'll go our separate ways, but, like, also, it's kind of fun to read the books with her. It's kind of fun to see her try a cupcake for the first time, right? And so you see the trajectory of this is stupid, I don't want to do this, and then, like, oh, but suddenly we're dancing and I realize I want to do these things. These things that I thought were dumb have a different meaning now because she's there. The reason why I resented these things was because I had no one to share these things with. And so you get that the only thing I lose is her. I lose her smile, I'll lose her laughter, I'll lose her warmth, and I'll lose that as part of my life, like something that I've now, even though it's only been like a day, that's something that I've grown accustomed to, that I could get used to. That's something that I realized that I've been yearning for, and I never noticed that before. Like, my dream was to be alone. Right? And then we realize, oh shit, no, the dream was not to be alone. And then I See the Light is actually asserting what he wants, that his dream has changed. It's to be with Rapunzel. So my verdict, is this movie hurt by a lack of Flynn song? No, like, it's okay, we can get away with it, right? But do I yearn to see a Flynn song? Yes, and that is why we are getting into the yearning part of the video basically now. Like, I walk away from this movie fantasizing about the Dimitri-esque pining and musical numbers and what a song like that would have sounded like, and I really hope one day maybe Tangled will get a Broadway version like Frozen did. That way we can get the 20 songs, because even Disney Cruise Line is still limited in runtime, right? And so I just want all of the Flynn songs to ever exist, and that's the one thing where I kind of felt like something was missing. Not enough to hurt my experience, but that is something that, like, is missing in my heart, so to speak. At number 8, we have The Princess and the Frog, which definitely has my favorite soundscape or song style out of all of the modern Disney princess movies. There is a lot of reasonable criticism with the movie, especially in terms of the frog sections, and I feel like that if this wasn't a musical, if this movie did not have banger after banger, it would be scrutinized a lot heavier. Even though I love the story and the characters and the art, a lot of people, myself included, feel like that the script did a big disservice to Tiana, and I feel like that what saved that weak script was the entertaining, fun, and emotionally compelling music, because that's what people really remember. But when we talk about characters who aren't really a part of the music, we have Tiana's mom, Charlotte, and then Naveen in terms of him having his own solo. So when it comes to Tiana's mom, I don't think that they really could have added a song without slowing down the pacing of the beginning of the movie, but in a Broadway version where they add like 20 more songs for the runtime, I could imagine a song by Tiana's mother about her father and trying to tell Tiana, like, you never know when it's going to be your last day. Like, I know that's kind of morbid, but her father did die in a war, presumably, I think, and so you're trying to tell Tiana, hey, don't let life pass you by because you never know. The core theme of Tiana and Naveen's relationship is the fact that their strength is the other's weakness. And what I mean by that is, Naveen, for example, knows how to live, he knows how to have fun, but his flaw is his lack of responsibility, right? Whereas Tiana, she works really hard, but she cannot live a little, you know? And so that's a lesson that they learn from each other. So I feel like that having a song from her mom would have helped to punctuate that point, because when looking back on this movie, I think a lot of people treat it as Naveen was the one who needed to learn the lesson, but it's supposed to be equal, it's supposed to be both of them, and that's why the theme for this movie is the pop song like I Never Knew I Needed and everything like that, because what the other person was is something they never knew they needed, right? And so I feel like that it would have been helpful to punctuate like, no, Tiana has an issue too. Obviously, and dig a little deeper, Mama Odie does say this, but I think that people see Naveen's problem as the bigger problem because we are conditioned to think, oh, well, working hard is a good thing, right? Capitalism, I don't know. We're conditioned that way, and so I think even though it is mentioned by Mama Odie, it kind of goes out the window for a lot of people because a lot of people don't see the problem with it. A lot of people are exactly like Tiana and are workaholics in our society, and so her behavior is a lot more normalized, I guess you could say, right? So for Tiana's mom, as a musical comparison, I'm thinking of something similar to Days of Plenty or Here Alone from Little Women that their mom sings in the show, but I feel like that this would be more like a jazz ballad to fit with the rest of the movie's sound. It's about what you want for your kids, and so I feel like in a Broadway version of Princess and the Frog, I would stick that in there. In terms of Charlotte, it's a similar situation where I could only see this being added in a Broadway adaptation just because of time. So you can have a couple places where she gets her own like solo song. The first one is like a comedy song at the diner with all this buildup. Imagine that Charlotte is fantasizing about the party and she's like, and then we'll go and we'll meet the prince, and we have this big triumphant climax moment, and Tiana's like, I can't go. And then it's like a sad trombone, like everything wilts. Like that's a very common thing to happen for comedy songs in musical theater, is a build-up like that that's immediately crushed by something. But then you have the rebound musically with Charlotte asking Tiana to cater the party, and that would also show like Charlotte's intelligence. She's like, wait a minute, I know how to get my friend there. This is my grand plan. And for some reason, I have no idea why, because this isn't exactly the vibe, but I'm imagining the world will remember me from the Bonnie and Clyde musical, but like it's Glinda Barbie. Like I feel like that's kind of who Charlotte is Glinda Barbie. So I think think that that vibe of the Bonnie and Clyde musical, but then also like put some pink sparkles on it, like that's kind of what I'm picturing for a diner song. The other thing they could have done is have a production number similar to the party song in the New Great Gatsby musical that happens during Charlotte's party. Pretty self-explanatory. I could also see a friendship song between the two where after she gives Tiana the dress, Charlotte is like, I remember we were dressing up as little girls and like, look at us now. You've always been my best, most truest friend. Like kind of like No Matter What from Beauty and the Beast. That's a song between Maurice and Belle. Obviously, this is not father-daughter. It is just friendship, but just something that reinforces their bond would probably appear in a Broadway version. But I don't think it's necessary in this version of the movie because we see them as children. Like, we know this. Charlotte does not have any other friends, and so we don't really need a song, but in a Broadway version, I could see them adding one. And that's really my verdict on Charlotte. Like, I think that these are fun ideas in the context of a bit of a revised script and a larger Broadway runtime and everything, but another criticism about the movie is that they focus on Charlotte's development in her character a lot, and some people feel like Charlotte overshadows Tiana. When you see people talk about the movie, usually online, it's about Charlotte or Dr. Facilier, and that's not good considering that Charlotte is supposed to be a side character. Charlotte's presence in the movie or taking up too much of the space of the movie is something that people criticize. And so I think that adding some songs in the movie would actually cause problems because she and Naveen are so active in comparison to Tiana and overshadow Tiana. And so even though I think these ideas are fun, I don't think that we needed a Charlotte song in the movie unless we could figure out how it benefits Tiana's development in some way. And this is where I need to have a sidebar about Charlotte and Tiana's mom. Can you guys tell me if I'm misremembering or am I crazy? Like, does Tiana just go missing during the movie and nobody notices? Because we know more than a day has passed because we have the night of the party, which is nighttime, right? And then you have like another day and then the parade is at night again, right? And so she's been gone for a whole day or maybe two. And you'd think, right, that Charlotte would want her only friend at her wedding as her maid of honor. Like, no matter how distracted she is by fake Naveen, I think that that's my other problem is that like they've been best friends since childhood and she doesn't even notice that Tiana is gone, doesn't even care to try to like, hey, Tiana's mom knocking at the door. I'm getting married. I just wanted to, you know, invite Tiana, make sure Tiana gets fitted for the maid of honor dress or something, right? Nobody realizes that she's gone, and I think that's so fucked up. And even if Charlotte didn't notice, right? Like, Tiana's mother would notice. They live together. So where does she think that her daughter is? Like, I know that she works a lot, but she would have missed a day of work, and that's not like Tiana at all. So, like, they just forget about her. The reason why I brought up everything I did earlier and also this little sidebar is because Tiana's characterization is a big point of criticism when people talk about the movie online because she's very passive in what is supposed to be her movie. Things just happen to her versus her motivating the plot. I think it goes without saying that I am not the one who decides whether or not this representation is good, but what I am saying is that I did agree with the criticisms that were tabled by other content creators in their video essays about the movie and how they felt it represented them or didn't do a good job at representing them. As I was researching things, I saw this suggestion that Tiana should have made a deal with Dr. Facilier after she gets shut down by the real estate agents at the party. And there was no elaboration about how this would work, but personally, I'm thinking that Tiana could have changed from a frog to a human at will to find Naveen without knowing the context of who she's looking for and why, in exchange for her dreams to come true. So think like Ursula situation, where it's like, okay, Tiana, if you come back with Naveen, you will get your dream, you will get your restaurant, or you will be a frog forever after how many days if you don't bring him back. So based on when this is recorded, I don't have a great understanding of the plot of the Tiana ride at Disney World, but she does have this like outfit, which I would say is like adventurer's outfit. Like she has pants and like a little hat and everything. So I'm imagining she like gets ready and she's going into the swamp like that. And that way, Tiana can actually tell Charlotte and her mom that she is leaving and that she'll be back for the wedding. Tell her mom, I have a life-changing job. I promise I'll come back, but I'll be gone for a couple of days. And that gives Tiana some agency because instead of just getting like wrapped up with Naveen, this is a choice that she made and her fate would be tied to Naveen's fate by virtue of the contract. But we don't have time for a whole rewrite right now. I don't know if I think that I should rewrite the movie, but if you guys are interested, I don't know, maybe I'll do it just for fun. Not to say that I know better, but just as an idea brainstorm or something like that, because I don't think the movie is like that bad. It's not on like Wish level or anything, but I do think that the idea is interesting because then that has an interesting implication for Tiana's character. It was like the one time she took the easy way out, like she went to the Shadow Man, like the one time where she didn't depend on herself and her hard work, she ended up like this. And so I feel like that instead of Tiana kind of scalding Naveen, which is fine for her to scald him because he was being stupid, right? It could be like, oh no, we both got ourselves into this situation. Like she's mad at herself and she takes it out on Naveen, but she doesn't just have the moral superiority over Naveen because they both did the same thing. They just did it for the opposite reasons that I talked about earlier. Tiana did it because she wants to achieve her dream and that's related to her working hard, whereas Naveen did it because he just wants to relax all the time. Like, you know what I mean? He wants to relax all the time and he doesn't want to get married to solve his financial problems. Like, that's the whole point. And so it can be they both went to Dr. Facilier because of their fatal flaw. You guys know what I mean? And so I think that that's really interesting. But anyway, even in the original movie, though, I feel like they could have done an Almost There and then Friends on the Other Side reprise because Dr. Facilier does take Tiana through her dream and everything, but like, that's not sung. Why not just sing it? Why not have Dr. Facilier tell Tiana, you're almost there. If you give me this, you will be there. Like, your dream is within reach. Like, have the villain sing what was once a hero song. Kind of like a Prince Ali situation, I guess. Anyway, sidebar over, this leaves us with Naveen, and he has sections of songs where his motivations and his I want is pretty clear, but he doesn't have his own solo. This movie is sort of missing a love song between the two characters, but I think that Evangeline kind of works the same as Tale as Old as Time. Like, it's a third party singing about the couple, even though it's Ray singing about his love, like really it's about Naveen and Tiana. But what I really would have liked is a more musical theater style version with revised lyrics, obviously, because the lyrics are kind of vague, but a revised version of the pop song for the movie, which is Never Knew I Needed, and we could have had that sung by Naveen. As he's going to propose to Tiana, he has that song. He's acknowledging what he never knew he needed. And for comparison, think of Flynn's part from I See the Light or Words Fail from Shrek. I'm mostly thinking about Words Fail right now. He could start singing to himself, like, oh my god, I'm so nervous about the proposal, and then he starts singing to Tiana, and then he's messing up the proposal. He never ends up confessing in front of her, and then they have that thing where it's like, oh look, that's where I was gonna build the restaurant, and there's that like moment where Naveen realizes that he can't ask Tiana to marry her because he wants to see her dreams come true, and so it could be a sad like aside to himself. Tiana's like, what were you gonna say? And he's like, nothing, and then to himself he's like, you're what I never knew I needed, right? Like, that's how the song would end, and it would be all sad and everything. But we would have to basically rearrange the song, rewrite the lyrics of the song to be more specific, but the sentiment of Never Knew I Needed is like the thesis of the movie, so it kind of baffles me, like the fact that they didn't have a version in the actual movie sung by the characters. And to tackle the criticism that Tiana and Naveen spend most of the movie as frogs, I feel like that we could have fixed this by not just like speeding through and doing like any % speed run when they turn back into humans after the wedding. I feel like what would have been really interesting was a love song when they're getting married as frogs, basically. Kind of like, this is a weird comparison, but like the wedding song that happens in Barbie Princess and the Pauper, where they're getting ready for the wedding and they're both singing and like that's the end finale of the movie. I think that it would have been interesting to start Never Knew I Needed theater version, and then that would answer the thematic question of dig a little deeper. Like, the answer to Tiana and Naveen's problems were each other, the lessons that they learned from each other, and this would be punctuated by like having them get married as frogs, like they both have their own little verse, and then they kiss and turn human, and then they keep singing as human and like going through their lives through song, and it's a bit more slowed down that way. I also think it would have been a good idea to linger on whether or not after they become human, they will stay together. Cause like, it's different when you think that you're both going to be frogs for the rest of your life. But are you telling me there was like nothing diplomatic to sort out about like Naveen getting married, you know, to like a commoner, like Tiana doesn't have any money? Like, that could have been an interesting out of thin air from Aladdin sort of moment. Like, are we still going to be together, or are we just going to return to our normal lives now? Like, my big beef is with this is is that they get married as frogs, and then immediately it cuts to them getting married as humans in the church. Like, we don't get to go through the motions of their happy ending. You're telling me that Tiana went missing for multiple days, and then suddenly we just cut to her getting married, and then you have like racism being solved by a crocodile, and then the happily ever after is like totally glossed over instead of being really lived in. And people may argue that Beauty and the Beast or The Little Mermaid also do that, like The Little Mermaid has a transition with Eric and Ariel kissing, and then suddenly like they're kissing on the boat and they're getting married. But like, it's really not, because when you think about it, Belle and Ariel are already happy. They're already kind of living in their happily ever after in like the middle of the movie, but the happiness gets interrupted by the villain. Like, if not for Ursula's curse, if not for Ursula winning, if Ariel and Eric had kissed before the sunset, it would have been like, oh, well, they just keep living happily ever after, right? Like, we already see them happy in the middle of the movie, but then with Princess and the Frog, Tiana and Naveen, they commit to spending their lives together, but we don't really get to see, like, the development of their happiness. I feel like they really rushed through the ending of the movie, and so to combat that criticism, if they were going to make a Broadway version, I feel like there should be a couple more songs after the frog marriage, like back with the people again. That's why we're at the yearning midpoint of the video, because I do yearn for more from this movie. And there's something that just hit me that is not in the script for this video, but it's already gonna be long, so what the hell? And I don't remember what I was watching. If you guys have any inkling or idea, like, I can't remember if it was a video essay or a documentary or something, like, I just don't know. And so if you guys can find it, I always like to credit people, like, I don't wanna, you know, take somebody else's words or anything. But I read something or I saw something, and basically what they were saying is that young boys were able to see men be emotionally vulnerable in Disney movies, like Quasimodo sings, right? Aladdin sings, Hercules sings. But when you think about it, in more like modern Disney, you have Naveen, and then you have Flynn, and then even Maui. I think Maui even makes a like, oh, are you gonna break out in a song type of joke. I think Kristoff probably makes a joke like that. And so you'll notice that even though Disney's trying to be more progressive in everything, they've actually taken a step backward. Like, they're trying to do better. Like, a lot of people cite Kristoff. He's not like, Anna, I'm here to rescue you. He's like, Anna, what do you need? Like, this isn't a man coming to save the day. He's coming in to like help the leading protagonist. He's not coming to take over. He's coming to assist Anna. He doesn't think that she's a damsel or incapable. I think that was Frozen too. But at the same time, you have these like character traits where it's like, but I'm not singing, right? Like, Flynn has the sorry boys, I don't sing. And for Flynn, I think it's okay because of the type of character that he is. But that's just like an interesting trend that just like struck me all of a sudden. I'm like, oh, that's kind of sad. Like, that's kind of sad when you think about some of the characters. The male characters do not sing about their deepest vulnerabilities. And I don't know where the change happened, because like older Disney movies did that. But now, like, it's usually the male characters at the scene of the crime when we talk about characters that don't sing or do not sing in a way that is like genuine and sincere. But now, as we're getting into our top 7, I'd like to take a moment to thank all my patrons and YouTube membership members for their support. I wouldn't be able to do anything without you guys, literally, and I'm really proud of the content that I've been able to make since trying to go full-time for the past couple months. If you want to support me and allow me to continue to make weekly content while also getting early access and the ability to vote on what comes next, please consider checking out, again, Patreon or YouTube membership members. I also have video commissions open, and the way that this works is that you can commission me to do a video about your favorite song, and we will talk about everything. It'll be as high quality as all my other analysis. It will probably be an hour long. We will leave no stone unturned. And so if you want to support me that way and get a little something out of it, you can check that out. Or for those of you that do songwriting, I do have a songwriting consulting commissions open because I need a job and I have no money. But anyway, and so despite all my amazing ideas, I'm still jobless. So let's keep going. So number 7 on our list is Mulan, and for some people, Mulan like barely qualifies as being a musical, because some people define a musical as having more than 3 songs, and Mulan only has 4, and so like we barely got away with it. And part of this is because Mulan mostly stops being a musical after they find the destroyed village. And I think this is a very interesting and strong narrative choice for the movie. I think in terms of like musical theater, it's kind of insulting to suggest that, oh, the singing needs to stop because things have gotten serious. Like, I think that works in a movie format. There's some implications to that like musical theater can't be serious that I don't really like. But I think for the context of a movie musical, like, it's fine. I kind of see both sides to it. I like the choice. I don't like the implications ramifications, if that makes sense. I like the idea that they basically want to return as heroes to impress women. Like, that's what Girl War Fighting For is really about. But then they're confronted with this death and they realize how shallow that they are being. Villages are being wiped out and whole families have been erased or probably displaced if anybody has survived. And so that could easily be their own villages and their own families. And that level of tragedy and suffering makes them get serious. So in terms of characters that don't sing, we basically have Mulan's father, Shan Yu, Mushu, and Shang in terms of Shang having a love song. Because obviously, Shang has one of the most iconic Disney songs ever, but it's not really about him. With Mulan's father, I think that a reprise of Reflection, where she and her father have a duet, that would make everybody cry like babies, like when she comes home at the end of the movie. I think that's a really sweet idea. And on that, my verdict with him is similar to like what I said about Cinderella. The movie works fine without it, but I would have appreciated that reunion song at the end of the movie. I'm also firmly in the camp that Shan Yu does not need a villain song. I don't think he needs to rally the troops, like clearly they're all on board, right? And he also doesn't convince Mulan of anything. With the qualifications I talked about in terms of villains having songs earlier, there's not really anywhere you can put one. The only thing I could see, in theory, is a conflict song between him and Mulan starting at like the warrior from the mountains line. But again, like Shan Yu is not as involved as Gleb to justify an Anastasia situation. Like the hero and the villain have a duet and they're squaring off together. I don't think that the villain of Mulan is Shan Yu. He's an obstacle, like he's a tool that is used so Mulan can prove herself, but he isn't exactly what's in her way. Like that would be the patriarchy. Not only would singing from him, like that would be very shocking and very out of character because he barely has any lines to begin with, but also the beef is not with Shan Yu, you know? He's just sort of a puppet. Like he's a plot device so Mulan can prove her point. Let's talk about Mushu. Based on what I've said about other songs, you guys may be smart enough to know where this is going. Mushu has this like genie-esque motivational song where like Mulan is dressed up as a man in her disguise, but she's looking out towards the camp and it's that moment where Mushu shows up for the first time and is like, I'm here to help you. And so basically he's singing and giving her advice on how to act manly and carry herself, like you need me or else you're fucked because you don't know anything about men. Like that's basically what the song is. And it's funny because like this cut song is very similar to a song that Donkey has in Shrek the Musical, and those are both Eddie Murphy originated characters. Obviously Eddie Murphy did not get on Broadway and play Donkey, right? But I don't know, it was just kind of funny to think that they both serve a similar role in that way. Like in the show, Donkey has the song like Don't Let Me Go, and that's kind of what the Mushu song is giving. Like it's giving, hey, you need me. So here's my hot take, right? Mushu has a voice that's more pleasant than like Iago, but like he doesn't need to sing, okay? I feel like that Disney sometimes gets lost in the sauce with like the sidekick songs, especially after Aladdin, and people will blame the genie for this. I don't think that this is the genie's fault actually, like the casting of the genie. I think it's the casting of Iago that actually started to cause this problem, that he is the actual like sleeper agent here. In The Little Mermaid and Beauty and the Beast, the songs are different because those characters are not like quirky merchandisable sidekicks or whatever. Like they're characters with supporting roles that also sing pleasantly, like, you know, Mrs. Potts and then Lumiere. Like they have fine singing voices. They're not trying to do kind of like an annoying. I know that Iago's voice is real, by the way. Like I'm pretty sure that's just how Iago's like actor sounds, but it was casting comedians that have that distinctive voice and don't necessarily like have a singing voice that started to cause this issue. And I also know that like Iago doesn't sing, but I think it's just the casting decision of Iago started to snowball and cause this problem where they were getting those people with the iconic voices like Mushu again. Mushu is at least still a person. Like Mushu has a person-like motivation and Iago doesn't, but everything goes downhill after Iago. Also in the second movie, I think Iago does sing, which is like horrible. Like I wish I didn't know that. But anyway, so my point is that Mushu's on kind of the borderline of this issue where like, I'm like, you're still a person, but at the same time, you're more like Iago where I'm like, this character is not really a supporting character who happens to be funny. Like they are here to annoy me personally in almost every single sidekick. This is also best seen in Wish with the goat, by the way. Like, I'm a hater, okay? I'm a hater of all of these sidekick characters most of the time, okay? I think Timon and Pumbaa are okay. Like, Timon and Pumbaa, they saved the day, they're fine. But when we start to talk about, like, other things like the gargoyles and Hunchback of Notre Dame, and like they have a song and how they derail the plot and like make a very serious movie, like way too unserious. Tonal whiplash does happen in Hunchback and definitely happens in Hercules. And so all of that to say, no, we got lucky that somebody had the common fucking sense to cut this song. Please stop making characters like Mushu sing. I don't want to hear it anymore. Obviously, the million-dollar question here is about Shang. Should he get a solo? Should he get a love song with Mulan? What should we do? And so my opinion is that they shouldn't have a love song. And that's because the movie's not really about that. Love just kinda happens, right? But it's not exactly like the plot. So I don't think that they need a love song because that's not really the point and that wouldn't contribute a lot to the theme of the movie. What I think would contribute to the theme of the movie is a betrayal song where Shang finds out Mulan's true identity in the tent. I'm imagining a I'll make a man out of you and then reflection type reprise hybrid. So again, similar to Neva Flows, because I love songs like this. I love when the hero and the villain sing together and they're united by some sort of theme, but they're on the opposite ends of that theme. I'm also thinking about My Goodbye from Epic the Musical. I'm like mostly thinking about My Goodbye. Gleb is trying to kill Anastasia, so that's very different. I'm thinking of like, this is where we part ways because we are both hurt from the reaction that the other person has had. You know what I mean? So in my head, I see Shang struggling with the rules and his duty versus maybe what his father would have wanted him to do. Because I think that's an interesting idea because they say it's treason, right? So I'm assuming that means execution because he's like, you saved my life, right? So I'll spare yours. That implies that the penalty would have been death for Mulan, if not for that. So I feel like that it could be that struggle. Maybe Shang's father would have been more lenient. Maybe he was a bit more like he thought that the rules could be broken depending on like how honorable the other person was. Maybe Shang's father was a bit more sentimental. Maybe he was a bit of a rebel or a rule breaker. Like obviously he's the general of an army, but maybe he did have a bit more of a sentiment for his men. And obviously he's dead. So it could have been this thing that like Shang's father died protecting like his men or something like that. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up for a reason that it's like, but my father would have wanted this, but the emperor would have said that, like that sort of thing. And Mulan would be like, I literally saved your life. I saved the day. I thought that you were better than this. I thought that maybe out of everyone, you would understand where I'm coming from. But now I have no hope that you understand at all. And like off the top of my head, so this is what I wrote. Again, off the top of my head, I'm imagining giant climactic argument where Mulan is like, can you tell me truly that if you'd had known, you would not have traded your father's life for your own dishonor or shame? You'd have done the same, still despite it all, we're through. Or something like that, like she goes up to the high note and then, is this what being a man really means to you? Right, and like you have that reflection callback. So that's what I'm imagining, right? And then you'd have like this quiet, is this what being a man really means to you? I think that would have been crazy. What it's saying is that your father just died, and clearly you have a lot of feelings about it. Are you telling me that if you had the chance to save him, you wouldn't have taken that chance because of some stupid fucking rules, right? And so I feel like Mulan really railing into him. I think that that would have been fucking fantastic, and then it ends kind of with like the reflection, because first she's using Shang's own melody and throwing it back in his face, right, from Be a Man, but then she reflects on it and she thinks, wait a minute, I know who I am. It's you who doesn't know who you are. I'm confident in my decision. I feel good about doing this. I know I did the right thing. What about you? Is this what being a man really means, or is being a man knowing when the rules should be broken in favor of saving another person's life? don't have Shang lyrics for that though, so that will have to be in your imagination, or if somebody else is like, I'll do that, Cal. Anyway, I also think Girl We're Fighting For should have been the reprise that happens in the movie. Like, they have a coarse version of, like, I'll Make a Man Out of You that comes back when they're all dressing up as women and scaling the castle and everything. I don't know why they used I'll Make a Man Out of You, because I feel like Girl We're Fighting For makes more sense, because when Mulan comes back and, like, gets everyone on board with her plan, she says, you trusted Ping, why is Mulan any different? And you could have had Shang admitting that he was stupid, and Mulan is a girl worth doing what? Breaking the rules for. And how her friends, they decide to, like, dress up and embody the girl we're fighting for, because Mulan is the girl we're fighting for. So it should have been Shang has a little sing, and then the boys have a little sing, and then Mulan has a little sing. Like, it could have been, and then the chorus comes in, and that would have correctly answered the thematic question of the movie, because I feel like that I'll Make a Man Out of You doesn't, because it wasn't about being a man, it was about being a woman. Mulan is the one that changes the tide. And so I'm kind of imagining that Ready as I'll Ever Be sort of thing from Tangled the series, but everyone sings Girl We're Fighting For in a different way. And then maybe it ends like Girl We're Fighting, as in Shang Yu needs to take out Mulan personally, like she's a girl, literally we're fighting because she's the strongest person in the army. So I think that that's fun. I don't know why. I don't know why they didn't. I don't know why they used the other one instead of this one. Maybe it's because they didn't know how to make an epic version of Girl We're Fighting For, but like I hear it in my head. So I feel like it wouldn't have been that hard, but I guess based on that I kind of get it, is that you would have to reorchestrate and kind of rewrite the piece versus sticking I'll Make a Man Out of You is just like that was already hype, so maybe it was just, I don't know, less work. So obviously you guys can see I'm very passionate about adding songs to Mulan, so my verdict is yes, Shang should have gotten a little something. I walk away with that longing if they had used that angst and that betrayal and that tension from the tent scene and just put it into song form like they did with other things like the mob song, for example. Like, I just feel like the movie could have really fucked if it had that, and also the Girl We're Fighting For reprise. And so I do have yearning. I do hope that one day somebody writes the Shang Mulan argument song. At number 6, we have Frozen, and the reason why I put Frozen in this video but not Frozen 2 is because I think that Frozen was still made with the intent that Anna and Elsa would be in the Disney princess line, and then the movie was just like too successful. And so I think that Frozen 2 should go with the other movies, but Frozen to me is still like a princess movie. And this is the first one that we're talking about that has a fully stacked Broadway musical version. In the movie version, everyone sings except for the King and Queen, the Duke of Whistleton, Kristoff, sort of, like in terms of him having a solo, kind of like how we talked about the Disney men problem earlier, and then also Hans in terms of having a solo. Not a Han Solo, a Han Solo. In terms of Elsa and Anna's parents, I do prefer the opening of the Frozen musical versus how they did the movie. And this is because with Cinderella, as we mentioned before, a lack of cast-wide opening number works because it conveys that isolation and abuse. But Anna isn't isolated until after the incident with her and Elsa. So I don't think that the movie should have started with Frozen Heart. Musically, Frozen Heart has that foreshadowing towards the isolation and the conflict between the sisters. But I think it would have been better to have things be bright and happy and then do Frozen Heart and then like continue on with the movie, because then we would see the contrast. Frozen Heart correctly sets up the thematic question of the movie and the conflict in the movie, like Frozen Heart is about Elsa and Anna, but I like the idea in the musical of them introducing the entire kingdom because, like, they adore Elsa and Anna. It's so joyful, it's so happy, like, you know, they watch the kids play, like, there's this refrain of the sun shining on in Arendelle, and that's literally the sun is shining, but also metaphorically, so, you know, the princesses are the sun shining on the kingdom. It's only after Anna gets hurt that the parents keep them cooped up, and that's the turn from let the sun shine on to keeping both girls in the darkness, and that conveys what Anna lost more effectively. The musical makes a stronger choice here because of that. I'm neutral to this being in the movie, if that makes sense. Like, I like the change in the musical better, but not that far that I'd want to, like, reconstruct the Frozen that we have just to have it. But I like that idea, that you need to show what was before you can show the loss. And so Frozen kind of starts, like, yes, Anna and Elsa are playing together, but it's still in the castle, right? It's still, like, a little isolated. And so I feel like that we already start in, like, a suspicious spot where, yes, they're separated from each other, and so that has the element of loss, but the element of loss is stronger when you have Anna and Elsa used to play together in the kingdom, and you see that, and you see that that's what was taken away from Anna. That because of Elsa, her freedom was taken away. It wasn't just that her sister was taken away, but that her freedom was taken away as well. And so the musical highlights that a lot better. And I do like the other songs that they gave Elsa in the musical, like Dangerous to Dream and Monster and all of that stuff, but I think that Let It Go and For the First Time in Forever reprise, they do cover all of the ground that I would like to see with movie Elsa, though Dangerous to Dream particularly is, I think, a nice addition to the coronation scene. This may be another fun argument to have in the comment section, but do you guys think that Anna and Elsa are equal protagonists in Frozen? Because I feel like they are in the musical, but I think that you could make the argument that the perspective of the movie is from Anna. Hence, we don't have Dangerous to Dream because we still don't quite understand what is going on in Elsa's head. Like, we can guess, but part of that, like, limited perspective into Elsa is that she keeps it all bottled up until Let It Go happens. In the musical, because you see both of their perspectives equally, it makes sense for us to see in Elsa's head. But I wonder if the reason why we don't have songs like that, like again during the coronation scene or when Elsa's in the dungeon or whatever, is because the movie is not really about Elsa. Like, Elsa may be the most popular character, but the movie is about Anna's relationship with Elsa. And so I feel like, again, it's not that Elsa's a side character. I think that most people would say they're dual protagonists in like a story sense, but I don't think that in a music sense they really are. And so that could be an interesting discussion to have. And so that's why I think I don't want to see more from movie Elsa, because the way that they constructed it is that you're not supposed to get more until Let It Go. Whereas the Broadway musical, they have equal perspectives and equal sides. The Duke does not need to sing. So when we talk about Kristoff, I really like the song that they have on the sled together in the Broadway musical, with both of them challenging the other's notions about, like, what do you know about love? Because Kristoff has lived with trolls in the middle of the woods, so it's not like he's the most social person, but he's like, Anna, really? You fell in love with a man you just met? And so the song is kind of like, it reminds me actually of I've Got You Beat from Shrek. Fiona and Shrek are trying to one-up each other on their tragic childhoods. It's like kind of like that, because on the flip side, Anna also doesn't really know what love is because her parents never let her and Elsa continue to be in each other's lives. So she doesn't know like about the romantic side of things, but she doesn't even have the family side of things as a foundation. The first foundation for love should be friendship, and she's never had a friend because Elsa was taken from her. But I think that this song is okay for two reasons. Like, one, it's to foreshadow Anna's sad song later where she laments that she may not know what love is. There's a song called True Love. But like, the other reason is, it's because the movie isn't really about Anna falling in love, and neither are the songs that they gave Kristoff in the Broadway musical. It all leads back to the relationship with Elsa. So I think the Broadway songs in the musical are okay. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that they're good, but they're only good because they function in relation to Elsa. They wouldn't be good love songs. For Fixer Upper, the interactions with Kristoff only further that theme about Anna needing to accept Elsa for who she is. And so the songs that they added in the Broadway show are there because they're related to that theme. So I feel like a full-on love song or even a solo from Kristoff would be like really distracting, like from the point, and also a bit confusing given the thread that we have with Hans going on. Really, the only two things you can do, right? A love song where they both realize they're in love with each other. But the problem is, if Anna realizes that she loves Kristoff, she wouldn't go back to Hans, and so that doesn't make any sense to add anywhere. And the only other thing you could do is a solo where Kristoff is like, I'm in love with her, but I'm losing her to this other guy or something like that. And I feel like that's not really necessary. You know, that's not necessary, and it's also not helpful. Whereas in Flynn's case, I feel like it would actually be helpful. So this leaves us with Hans. And since Hans is a twist villain, he doesn't have a villain song. Even though you could see Love is an Open Door with villainous intent, right, in hindsight, he doesn't have like an actual villain song. And this is the start of a downward spiral for villain songs in Disney movies, and then also just having a villain in general. And on one hand, because of the twist, a lot of people are gonna say, well, they couldn't do it because you can't have Hans reveal that he's evil until right now. But what I don't understand understand is this could have been easily resolved by having First Time in Forever, Love is an Open Door reprise when Hans locks Anna in the room and reveals his true nature. Think about something similar to the tone shift in Mother Knows Best versus the Mother Knows Best reprise from Tangled, because that's what I'm imagining. The Broadway musical sort of has something like this called Colder by the Minute. I'm imagining kind of a mob song sequence that starts with just Hans, because here's something important about Hans that I feel like that people kind of miss. He would have lied to Anna forever about loving her under the usual circumstances. He is only forced to drop the act because Anna is literally cursed. If he doesn't kiss her, she'll know he doesn't love her. And if he does kiss her and it doesn't work, she'll know he doesn't love her. He can't wiggle his way out of this. He's in a complete lose-lose situation. And this goes back to Disney refusing to give characters songs during serious moments, but I feel like it would have been really interesting if they started this as a love song again. Hans is trying to feel something in order to con the curse, and that would have made the moment, I think, even more emotional, because we would buy into it more. If we had Love is an Open Door reprise, we would be like, oh my god, it's the reprise, Hans is here, he really does love her, but then Hans interrupts himself with his iconic line, because I do think his line already is good. But if musical theater songs exist to create clarity and to compel the audience and make us more emotional and all of that sort of stuff, a song would have punctuated the point of Hans's manipulation. He was ready to be manipulative toward the end, but then he's like, I'm fucked. And that's when we go into the First Time in Forever reprise where he's like evil. And I just think that this would really fuck, because think about it, for the first time in forever, Hans felt important and valued. Anna left him in charge of Arendelle, and in his own kingdom, he's 7 in line for the throne. And so it's not just the fact that he came here with the intention to marry one of them so he could sit on the throne somewhere. It's that he had an actual taste of that position in power when Anna left him in charge. And so now that he felt that, he doesn't want to lose that again. He was using Anna from the very beginning, but now he has no choice but to leave her to die. And I also think it would have been great if he spun this against Elsa here. If you didn't come back with a frozen heart, if you weren't cursed, if you did not require the kiss of true love that I cannot provide, we could have been happy. It's always Elsa at the scene of the crime. Like, I would have loved Hans spinning Anna's lyrics against her and then also trying to pit her against Elsa. Like, this isn't really my fault. This is still Elsa's fault. You realize that, right? Because if you didn't come back here cursed, I could have loved you. I could have grown to love you. You know, like, love doesn't just happen overnight. And so if she didn't ruin everything, you could have been happy. And what I think would be crazy is if he threw Anna's last lyric back at her. If he said, for the first time in forever, nothing's in my way, right? Or something like that before he locks Anna in the room and tells everyone that she's already dead. Like, that would be so fucked up if nothing's in Hans's way because he's leaving her to die. Like, that would be crazy. It would go so hard. I know I can't really do the male voice, but this is another song again. I would love to see somebody create this and sing a villain song as Hans. Then I'd want to transition into the Colder by a Minute climax song, where you have Hans rallying the people to execute Elsa for killing Anna. Then you have Elsa singing about how she needs to escape because she can't die, she has to stop the storm. Then you have Anna and Kristoff singing about looking for each other, looking for Elsa, and all of that stuff. And that's really the one thing I think is missing from Frozen. Where is the dark, menacing climax song like how Beauty and the Beast has one? Disney does such a disservice to itself by recently refusing to have a song when the movie gets serious. Like, when the movie gets serious is the best time to have a song. I feel like that this was a big missed opportunity, and this is the first case where I feel like it genuinely hurts the narrative and the movie is weaker because it doesn't have one. With everything else, I was just sort of yearning, right? Yearning into the void. But I think that this one just straight up hurts the narrative in my eyes, and I really wish that they would fix this with Frozen 2, and they didn't. We're just missing the dark climax songs, and like Wish tried to have one, which is a terrifying notion, but obviously like it's bad. At number 5 we have Aladdin, and I do plan to do a lot of Aladdin videos because there is a lot to talk about in terms of the troubled production history it had, and there are a lot of cut songs, so I would like to do a video like I did about the cut Tangled songs, but for now let's focus on Jafar, the Sultan, and Jasmine. So I know what you guys are gonna say, right? Jafar has a song. he has the reprise, but I'm talking about an actual solo song and whether or not he needed one. And you guys are gonna have to let me cook, okay? Because Jafar has a lot of songs. Like, the only reason why I haven't made that cut song comparison video for him like I did for Rapunzel's song from Tangled, and I'm working on the Mother Gothel before and after, is because you can't really do a before and after with Jafar because he has like 4 billion fucking songs. We have Why Me, Humiliate the Boy, Master of the Lamp, and My Finest Hour. And in the musical version of Aladdin, he has Diamond in the Rough. And that's like 5 different Jafar songs that they've been trying to give him. I do think that Diamond in the Rough has the best thematic relevance in terms of using the thesis of the movie against the hero, right? To manipulate Aladdin. This happens when they're trying to convince Aladdin to work with them to get the lamp out of the cave. But like, this song and the musical version of Jafar in general, it does not feel like Jafar to me. And the other cut songs also don't nail down who Jafar is either, and like I said, I'll compare them in more detail eventually, but if you've never heard them, they all sort of remind me of like Mad Hatter from Wonderland. Like, there's a like jazzy kick line element. Jafar is an old man. He's not theatrical in the same way Ursula is. He's not like a drag queen performer-esque character. Like, they want him to sing in a cabaret, like lying across a piano. He's giving the same personality as Ursula or the fairy godmother in Shrek or something. Like, that is not him. He is a serious character. I don't know why they keep making these songs where they try to make Jafar funny, because the point with the dynamic that he has with Iago is that Jafar is not fucking funny. Like, Jafar is the straight man, and Iago is the one that gets to be funny. He is not Preminger. This is not How Can I Refuse. It doesn't have that level of drama. Like, personally, I think if you want to give Jafar a solo, you should write something similar to The Dark of the Night from Anastasia or Hellfire. Like, it needs to be serious. I could totally see a Hellfire song about him lusting after Jasmine, because the movie, like, glosses over that and it's kind of confusing. Jafar personally strikes me as, like, I don't want to marry this bitch. Like, I really could not care less. I just want to be the Sultan. Like, I don't have any feelings for her. I don't give a fuck. But then, like, later, he clearly finds her hot, which is creepy, but also just, like, strange in terms of Jafar as a character. 2 versions of Jafar clearly exist in the script, and they didn't meld these versions together very well. The other problem with Jafar songs, other than like the tone problem, is that a villain is only as compelling as the hero. And so when you have songs like Why Me, where Jafar is kind of pitiful and he's like, I was always smarter than all of my peers and I was genius and no one recognized me, woe is me. And then you have Iago with these annoying interjections. It doesn't give the impression that Jafar is menacing. Like, it's just a pity song. You'd think that they want us to feel bad for him, but we don't like woe is me, especially for hero characters. You're not supposed to give them woe is me because nobody wants to watch somebody just like wallowing in their self-pity. They want the underdog who will try their best to fight back. But especially for a villain, like, that's a weird thing to do. And the other thing is that Jafar's beef is not with Aladdin, and so in these cut songs, they're talking about like a lack of recognition that Jafar has gotten from the Sultan in society, like basically how he would have been a better Sultan. But what the fuck does that have to do with Aladdin? That has nothing to do with Aladdin as the hero. And so it's very strange because the Sultan has all the power, right? Like in a legal or technical sense. But the Sultan himself, as a person, is like the opposite of a challenging opponent for Jafar. So when you have these Jafar songs that put the focus on the Sultan instead of Aladdin, who is the hero, it makes Jafar seem really weak because you're telling me you can't just kill this old man? At least if we had Hellfire Jafar's version, that would make sense to me because we put him in direct conflict with Aladdin. Aladdin is genuinely a rival for Jasmine's affection. And that's what I mean by this movie being confused, because in The Little Mermaid, Ursula does use Ariel to further her beef with Triton, right? She doesn't really give a fuck about Ariel. It's just using Ariel because there is literally no other way for Ursula to get what she wants. But with these Jafar villain songs, they don't really work because it makes you wonder, why did Jafar even need the lamp to be Sultan? Why is this a plot point anyway? Why is Jafar the antagonist if all he wants to do is to be the Sultan? And Aladdin is not really the threat. Like, I guess by Prince Ali, he becomes the threat to be the Sultan. But before that, why didn't you just kill him? Why didn't you murder him and then blame blame it on someone else. Why didn't you murder the Sultan and blame it on Prince Ali or blame it on Aladdin? If Jafar wants to kill Aladdin because he's Jasmine's romantic rival, that makes sense, and that feels high stakes because Aladdin has literally all the power with having the lamp. But Jafar doing all this just to kill a little old man that he probably could have killed anyway, and then singing about, like, I was never recognized for my genius, I should be salted. It's like, what are we even doing here? That's kind of silly. For heroes or villains, there has to be a reason why the entire time before the movie started they could not achieve their goals, and I don't understand why Jafar couldn't achieve his goal before this, and I think, again, the fix with blame the murder on street rat Aladdin, that makes a lot of sense to me in terms of fixing the trajectory of the movie. But otherwise, like, I think Jafar himself is a very confused character in terms of what they wanted to do with him, and so all of that being said, I don't think that Jafar should sing until Prince Ali reprise, period. Like, I don't even think that he should sing Diamond in the Rough. I don't think that the Broadway version did him very well, obviously. And I feel like a song before Prince Ali reprise really doesn't serve Jafar's character or the script in any way. But the reason why I'm okay with Prince Ali reprise is because, first of all, it's bottling up his emotions towards Aladdin the entire time, and he's finally won. So, like, this makes sense now to have the big, dark, emotional release, whereas before I can't imagine him singing. This makes a lot of sense because it's like, ha ha, I won! Prince Ali turned out to be merely Aladdin, right? Like, now I can actually see him gloating, and I can see the reason, I can see why he's burst out in a song, because now he finally gets what he wants. When he sings Prince Ali back at Aladdin, it's mocking and dark, and it's powered by beef, right? It's powered by legitimate beef with Aladdin, and by victory, as opposed to pity, and that's a much better choice. And cracking here makes narrative sense, because Aladdin is now directly in the way of the opportunity of being the Sultan, and so now it becomes about Aladdin beef and not the Sultan beef. And so my verdict with Jafar, all of that being said, is that stop writing Jafar songs. Nobody can write Jafar a good song. Also, I totally forgot about Return of Jafar while I was writing this script, so we're not going to talk about that either. Don't write songs for him unless you're going to write a song that's actually scary and not trying to make him like a French can-can girl or something. I really have no clue what they were thinking. So with the Sultan, I can't see him having his own song, but similar to our idea about Cinderella, I could see him starting a Jasmine song with Jasmine, please pick someone and get married. I'm getting old. I don't want to leave you alone and die. Like, that's basically what he says in the movie, right? And so I could see, like, Sultan section at the beginning of Jasmine's I Want song. And this brings us to Jasmine, who is a very interesting case because it's similar to Jafar. Like, she technically doesn't have an I Want song, and the songs that they did try to give her were cut from the movie. Every version of Aladdin they've made since tries to give her one, and it's to varying degrees of success. Like, I don't feel like anybody is writing her correctly. She has like 5 different songs. There's a song that was cut from the story where I believe at first Jasmine was genuinely like this because there was another love interest, and the whole point of Aladdin was supposed to be you covet royalty, but this is how the royalty are acting, and like you have Jasmine acting like a spoiled brat. But I think they tried to repurpose this so Jasmine is not a spoiled brat, and instead she's acting like a spoiled brat on purpose to drive a suitor away, and that makes a lot more sense to me. There was one version of the song where she was really just a terrible person, and then there was another version where it was just that she was pretending to be. And I think it's a fun idea, but I don't think it's a good idea for our first musical look at Jasmine to be something disingenuous. It would have caused more confusion in the future if they had Jasmine pretending to be an asshole. There's a song in the Aladdin musical that's at the Disney parks, I think, and it's called To Be Free, and that's the closest I think we have ever gotten to being a good Jasmine song. Like, this is the vibe I want in the movie. It does end a little too sadly, but basically what I would want is she is freeing the birds, and so this is an earnest, more sincere song, and maybe it starts off as sad, but then it gets hopeful. It's kind of like Out There or like Go the Distance or even Part of Your World. And so we do have like a little bit of sadness, but then Jasmine being like, no, I'm not gonna be sad. I'm going to fight back because that is within her character. There is a song that kind of tries to do this, and it's Palace Walls from the Broadway musical. And I like this song out of context, but not as part of Aladdin as a story, because it starts out very very strong. We have suitors talk of love, but it's an act merely meant to throw me. How can someone love me when in fact they don't know me? And you're like, yeah, Jasmine, pop off, right? But then we just nosedive downward, and I think that part of that is the inclusion of the handmaidens. The inclusion of the handmaidens kind of undermine Jasmine's loneliness. Part of the point of Jasmine as a character is that she is lonely and disconnected from everyone. Her best friend is literally an animal, like she is all alone. And presumably in the movie, yes, there are servants, but we never see them. And even if we did see them, Jasmine wants a friend who sees her for herself. You can't really have a true friendship with someone who's working for you, right? Like the handmaidens can't fulfill the role that Aladdin can. But their presence is also confusing because if you have servants and you're friends with the servants, they know what's going on outside of the palace walls, and so you should not be so ignorant to the plight of your people like Jasmine is when she does go into the city and she forgets that she has to pay for things, you know what I mean? And so I feel like that when you consider that, first of all, they can't really be her friends, but they act like her friends. But if they are her friends, why don't they tell her the truth about what's going on outside? Like, so that's just a confusing thing in general. They don't do anything well. They can't fulfill the friendship role well, but they also don't fulfill the information role well, and that kind of causes a little bit of a plot hole. Like, it's not the worst plot hole in the world, but it is something you wonder, like, why doesn't Jasmine know what's going on outside the palace walls if she has people that would willingly answer any question that she has? The other thing is that they completely take over this song. They motivate Jasmine, like, stand on your own 2 feet. She's like, well, what would you suggest I do? And they're like, stand up for yourself. Jasmine literally asks for what to do instead of deciding to sneak out of the palace herself, which takes away her agency and how proactive and how strong she was in the original movie. She decides to sneak out of the palace. She doesn't ask anyone, she just does it, whereas she's just like, well, I don't know what to do. How do I escape the palace walls? And it's so weird because they try to make Jasmine more progressive, but like the musical makes her less progressive, and then the live action I don't even want to talk about. So my verdict is I do think that Jasmine absolutely needed a song, and it should have been To Be Free. And I feel like baffled by the fact that they didn't give her one in the original Aladdin, but then also I just feel like that every version that tries to give her one does not understand the point of Jasmine. And that's another thing, again, about like musical theater, clarity and everything. Maybe if it was already crystal fucking clear in the actual movie, there wouldn't be all these like Jasmine misinterpretation problems. And so I feel like that's especially why we needed one. Aladdin and Jasmine also have a bonding song in the musical at Aladdin's house where both of them imagine what it would be like to be a million miles away. And I feel like that's nice foreshadowing for the magic carpet ride. And I throw that in there too, because I feel like it reinforces, like, despite class, the one thing they have in common is being trapped. And obviously the movie does this too in terms of the script, like they finish each other's sentence. But again, other Disney movies have love interests that sort of just like trip and fall into the plot. Like if we're talking about Kristoff again, right? The movie's not really about him. Out of all of the movies, Aladdin is like the one movie that is about their love. Like there is absolutely nothing going on. Like if Aladdin never met Jasmine, he would have never wished to be a prince. Like the only reason he wants to like change his circumstance is to be with her. The movie is a love story. This one is really about the romance as opposed to all of the other ones. So why not give them a more romantic song here? So at number 4, we have Pocahontas. And let's just get this out of the way. Pocahontas is problematic. You don't need me to tell you that. You've probably heard it from other people more qualified than me who have spoken about this at length. But there's so many things wrong with it that you could either list those things in alphabetical order or in chronological order of offense. So for our purposes today, looking at the music, I am thinking about this from the perspective of I am consulting and someone has given me a star-crossed lover's story with a similar theme, but this story does not bear any resemblance to an actual real-world person or culture. This movie should have never existed. What's unfortunate is, as a musical, not only does the music slap, but the actual pacing of this movie when it comes to the inclusion of the music and where the music is included, that is what I've been looking for this entire time as I've been talking about, oh well, when the exciting stuff happens, the music just disappears and the movie forgets that it's a musical. Pocahontas remains a musical all the way throughout. It's just unfortunate that this is the one that did what I wanted it to. And similar to Beauty and the Beast, that means that everyone gets a little something something, right? You may be thinking that I would say that John Smith doesn't have a solo like we've pointed out for the other male Disney characters, but his I Want is actually sneakily included in Mine, and I feel like that's all we need from him because it's different when a character is discovering what they want as they're speaking, so we need that 3-minute number. But like, John Smith would not get on a whole ass boat if he didn't want the adventure. Like, if he got a whole I Want number, it would be like if we had Part of Your World after Ariel makes the deal with Ursula. Like, you don't just trip and fall onto a boat that takes you halfway across the world and knowing that you may die. His commitment to his desire or dream is very much implied by the fact that he's even here. In terms of Cocoam, I feel like that having him sing about how he feels about marrying Pocahontas would actually lessen the impact of the conflict because, like, we do not need insight into this man's, like, deepest vulnerabilities because part of the point is that Pocahontas doesn't even really know him, yet she is supposed to marry him. The audience knowing the same amount of information that Pocahontas does is very effective because it drives home the point that we don't even know this man and she's supposed to marry him. The audience knowing as much as Pocahontas does is very effective for that point. And the other thing is that if you give a character a solo, we may like them. Cocoam is not like a bad guy. If he got a song, it would be like a nice love interest song. But we cannot be endeared to Cocoam because he's supposed to represent Pocahontas being forced by her father to conform. And so if you make him too likable, then it becomes like a Team Cocoam, Team John Smith situation or whatever, and that's not effective for what they are supposed to represent because this story is not a love triangle. He just represents something. He represents the life that Pocahontas does not want. Whereas John Smith, oh my god, John Smith! Whereas John Smith represents the more out of life that she wants. The only hill I will literally die on is that this movie is missing something. A love song, because it was cut. And again, despite all the issues with this movie being based on real people that did exist and again, never should have been made, If I Never Knew You is genuinely one of the most beautiful Disney love songs. And the fact that they cut it from this movie, when this movie is a love story, like basically nothing else is going on, right? Like the movie is about their love. It's very similar to Aladdin in that way. Imagine if Aladdin didn't have a whole new world. Like, that would be fucking crazy. So the fact that they cut this out of the movie, I don't know what they were thinking. And I think a big part of why a lot of people feel this way is because it talks about the tragedy of love, the grief that is part of love. It's not just like the happiness like a lot of other Disney songs talk about. And obviously, you know, love should be happy. I'm not saying that we shouldn't sing about those things, but this is different compared to any other Disney song that exists in terms of a Disney love song. It not only reinforces and clarifies the pain that they are going through, but it also reinforces their love, that despite everything that is happening, it was worth it. This may seem out of left field, but outside of the context of the movie, I feel like that this song really speaks to the idea of having a loved one, not even necessarily, you know, romantic love, but just having a loved one who is chronically or terminally ill in some way. Like, maybe it would have been less painful if we had never met and I never had to lose you, but ultimately the pain is worth knowing you because something would be missing if I never knew you. And so my verdict is this song had to 100% be in the movie. This is like the thesis of the movie. The story is a star-crossed lover's love story, right? And so the fact that it's not in here, it's completely ridiculous. I don't know what they were thinking. Not only just like as the thesis of the movie, but like this song makes me cry every time. So I do think that it should have been in there. And because it is, again, so different compared to other Disney love songs, we need to be able to experience all the sides of love, not just the happy side. And luckily we do have a full recording, so we can still enjoy it, but I don't know what they were thinking when they cut it. So getting into the top 3, you probably forgot about Sleeping Beauty, didn't you? So when we look at characters who don't have a song, we're pretty much just dealing with Philip and Maleficent, in my opinion. Now, the 3 fairies don't have their own, like, character number, production number sort of thing, but what's interesting about this movie is they utilize the course a lot to talk about what other characters are thinking and stuff like that. Like, during the wish granting ceremony, we have the course singing about what wish is being granted instead of the fairy in particular. So I feel like that they're pretty much covered because they have something that is speaking to their internal voice and thoughts. And that's what's really interesting about Sleeping Beauty, because outside of her, right, Sleeping Beauty herself and, you know, Philip when he joins her in the song, I guess, most of the movie is sung by the entire chorus, and that really contributes to the fairy tale vibe and setting. And with Philip, I think him being part of Aurora's song is enough for reasons similar to Cinderella's prince. He's not really a dual protagonist with Aurora, though they are intertwined at the beginning of the movie more than Prince Charming, but like he is still the love interest, so I don't think that we really need his own solo song. So we are left with Maleficent, and Maleficent should have 100% have gotten a song. And what's baffling to me is that there is a cut song from when Sleeping Beauty was in development, and it's called Evil. And unfortunately, it is ass. Fire on mute ass. It is like completely irredeemable, and I think it's because it's mostly sung from the Minions POV, and like any character who has an annoying character voice, like that automatically makes the song intolerable, but like it's genuinely awful, even from a composition standpoint. Sleeping Beauty Kids, which I had no idea existed, apparently tried to add a Maleficent song, and it's called Find That Girl, but I can't find a professional recording, and it's really hard to tell whether or not it's good, because like these are literal children singing, and also like, okay, I'm not gonna bully a child, but it would be easier for me to tell if it's good if I had access to a professionally recorded version, a song sung by an adult woman, instead of having to listen to a video that was shot in like 2040p and straining to hear the instrumentation over a child singing off key and off tempo. So I just don't know if it's good. As far as I know, I don't think that it's good, like as far as I could make out. I think we're getting back into Jafar territory with how they tried to write this song. It should not be funny, and they kind of try to make Find That Girl a little bit funny in the same way as the Jafar songs. Like, no, Maleficent needs the dark of the night. She needs Be Prepared. Like, she needs a song where she is drilling into her minions that they are fucking stupid for not finding Aurora, or she needs a song hypnotizing Aurora, or both. Out of the trio of the Evil Queen, Lady Tremaine, and Maleficent, I think that Maleficent is the one I can imagine naturally singing the most, and part of that is because she's a fairy. So I feel like a dark incantation that is like a magic spell for finding Aurora and also hypnotizing Aurora would fit naturally in this world, even though, as we talked about earlier, most of the time the bad guys don't necessarily break out in a song. But the exception to that in my head is that if it was a villainous song, if it sounded like witches' magic, that would still be natural within the self-imposed rules that this old Disney movie style had. Maleficent is iconic, but people consider Sleeping Beauty to be like the most boring Disney princess movie, and I think that not having a villain song is a big blow to the movie. Like, I think that if Maleficent had a villain song, people wouldn't say that, and that Maleficent not getting her time to shine in that way is responsible for the boredom, because it's much more interesting when you have those elements that keep people engaged. And so, my verdict, 100%, I need 2 on my desk by Monday. I don't know when you guys are gonna see this video, but anyway, I need 2 of these songs, one hypnotizing Aurora, and then also one where she is flaming the minions' ass because, like, they didn't find her and they're dumb and they're stupid. I think that it would be so much fun. I hope to see that one day. Like, I know a lot of people have used, like, Once Upon a Dream, especially because I think the Maleficent live-action movie did that, but, like, that's not what I'm talking about. I want, like, a full dark song that is unique to her, that doesn't just like take a reprise or something heard earlier in the movie and use that. I want a fully characterized Maleficent song. Now that we're at number 2, I want you guys to comment down below and tell me which movie did you think was going to be at number 2 versus number 1, because at this point, process of elimination means it has to be Beauty and the Beast or The Little Mermaid. But which one did you think was going to go here? And I'll give you a second, but this is Beauty and the Beast for our number 2. And Beauty and the Beast, I think, is the strongest musical that, quite frankly, I think that they have ever made in terms of the pacing and just sheer quality. So you guys may be thinking, Cal, if you think that, why didn't it go before Moana? And it would, except for the fact that despite all the beautifully crafted songs that this movie has, there is one character that does not have a solo, and that is the Beast. I guess Maurice doesn't sing, but this isn't about him. Beauty and the Beast is a true masterpiece, but my reasoning for my list placement wasn't just the necessity of the song, but the necessity of the song in relation to how important the character is. Out of everyone we talked about, the Beast is arguably, literally the most important character on our list, barring who we will discuss in The Little Mermaid. To me, the absence of a Beast song would be like if part of your world wasn't in the movie, because the protagonist should have an I Want song. And with a love interest like Shang or Kristoff, like we've talked about, like the love story is not the focus of the movie. It's a happy accident that happens during the conflict or the plot. But this movie is called Beauty and the Beast, and we do not get that musical satisfaction of having a song for the Beast. And with the Beast, I think what would have swayed my judgment is if we had a reason. The problem is I can't find any information about this. I can't find anything online. I can't find anything in the direct-to-DVD interviews that I have on my old-ass Beauty and the Beast copy. I can't find it, and that's very unusual. I would love to know if anybody has the tea, I don't know, in some like old archive that I just couldn't find. Like, I want to know if there is an official reason for this, because as far as I know, there isn't. But I do have a couple theories, and the first one is maybe they felt like what the Beast wanted was so obvious that they didn't feel like it was necessary for him to sing. But the reason why that doesn't really make sense to me is because the conflict is not what the Beast wants in terms of the curse being lifted. Like, I'm assuming that that's the argument. Well, we all know that he wants the curse to be lifted, so like, that's clearly the I want. We don't need a song about it, but that's not really the point in terms of the music in my mind. Having a Beast song like they do in the Broadway show, which we'll talk about in a minute, it's not really about do I want the curse to be lifted, because common sense dictates yes, obviously, but in that case, why doesn't the Beast just go do it? Why doesn't he go downstairs and just break the curse? The obstacle that is in Beast's way is himself, like his own tortured personal angst is not that can Belle love me, it is that I am fundamentally unlovable and I have no love in my heart, so I could never love her if I can't even love myself. And so that's what a Beast angst song would be about, like I can't love her is about. And so I feel like the idea of, well, we all know that the curse wants to be lifted, like that's not the information that we need to know at this point in the movie. What we need to know is the Beast really a monster, or is there still some humanity in him? And that's what If I Can't Love Her is about. That's the first time where we are seeing that he's not a heartless monster, he's actually in a lot of pain. The song in the Broadway version is the emotional core of the Beast musically, and that's how it contributes to the thesis of the entire movie. It's not just for who could ever learn to love a Beast in terms of Belle, it is also him. Does the Beast think that he is worthy of love? And that's what needs to be brought up and posed here, because this song makes us feel for the Beast. It does make him lovable, and so when you win over the audience, then you start rooting for the rest of the story, and that gets you on board with everything. Whereas it's a little bit more contentious in the movie in terms of like when you get on board with Beast as a character. Theory 2 is that maybe it was a narrative choice not to have the Beast sing until he is able to open up with Belle in something there. Characters don't sing unless they're being vulnerable, like we already talked about, and the Beast sees himself as too much of a monster, and he only sings when he saves Belle. And it's when the Beast goes to save Belle that in the movie, we see the humanity that is in him. And it reminds him of his own humanity as well, because a monster wouldn't do that. A monster wouldn't save Belle. So it proves something about him, that moment in the movie. And I will fight about this too, because I feel like that veers dangerously close into the territory of, well, serious characters don't break out in a song. And so I like the sentiment in terms of like a movie script, you know what I mean? Like in terms of a story, in terms of the writing. I don't like that sentiment in the context of a musical, because it feels like that idea of, well, the Beast is too serious here. He only sings when he opens up with Belle afterward. Like that feels like it's undermining the idea of a musical. The other thing is, I feel like that only furthers to create confusion about the point of Beauty and the Beast, because to me, it's not like all of a sudden Beast saves Belle from the wolves and then suddenly he's turned good now and before he was bad, like that there's a clear dividing line between his behavior. My interpretation, and I think the Broadway version's interpretation of Beauty and the Beast, is the idea that like the Beast was always good, but because he's been a monster for so long, he's basically been kind of like gaslit, like manipulated into thinking that he is actually a monster. He thinks that he is genuinely incapable, like I said, of being good and loving someone and all of those other things. And so he sees himself as a monster, but he's not actually bad from the beginning. Like, he's good from the beginning. The good was always there. He just didn't think that he had like the right to express it. He thought that he had to act monstrous, that there was no other way for him to be. So if you have this clear dividing line between like Beast is bad before saving Belle from the wolves, and then after that Beast becomes vulnerable and then he becomes human, but only after that moment, it kind of makes it seem like that change wasn't gradual, if that makes sense. Like, the entire point is that the Beast was good all along. He just needed a chance to prove it, or I guess, I don't know, get out of his head, right? Because when he's confronted with danger, suddenly, like, everything in terms of what's going on in his personal angst, that goes out the window. All he can focus on is his instinct, his naturally good instinct to go save Belle, and that's what's really important here. And so I feel like if I can't love her sets up a question. Like, the Beast thinks, I have no love in my heart. I cannot give my love to her. It's not even a concern whether or not she could love me. It's that, like, nothing, I feel nothing, and so I can't do it. And then the answer comes in the wolves, because he finds out that when push comes to shove, like when he's really under the pressure, he does love her. He can care about someone. He can be heroic. And so I feel like that the divide in the movie makes it seem like, I don't know, that Beast is almost too monstrous, like if you're gonna take that interpretation of why he doesn't sing. Whereas in the musical, it's that he always had the capacity to be heroic. He just needed to be put in a situation where he had to spur into action without thinking about whether or not he could do it. He just does it because he does care about her. But the reason why I bring that up as a possibility is because I could see some people thinking that is a compelling narrative choice, to only have Beast sing after that sort of like midpoint, if you want to call it that. But like, I just made that up right now, right? Like, we don't know if that was an actual like artistic choice, or if it was just like, we don't have the time and the money. I just made that up. And so dependent on what the actual answer is, it would change my opinion. Like, if I could shake down Alan Menken and be like, why didn't you guys give the Beast a song? And he said, like, that was supposed to be a narrative choice and we will die on the hill. I'd be like, who am I to argue with Alan Menken, right? But if Alan Menken was like, nah, they just ran out of money, bro, I'd be like, well, there you go. So if we had the money, Beast should have had a song. So my verdict is that the Beast 110% needed a song, especially after seeing the Broadway version. This just feels like the emotional core of the Beast, musically and in terms of his character. It is the thesis of his character, and it's so raw and emotional and moving, and I feel like that if this song had been in the movie, people would be sobbing. Like, I feel like that people really would have resonated with this, and it's just unfortunate. I mean, obviously we have the Broadway version to enjoy at the very least, I guess, unlike Maleficent where we just have nothing, but like, this is the one where I fiercely wish that they had done something like that in the movie, and I wish we could see it animated and like the entire sequence. Like, I just wonder what they would have done in terms of like, would they have the Beast in his imagination? Would they have him imagining something? Or would it all be in his room? And would it be directed in a very intimate way like that? Like, I don't know, but I wish I could see it. I really want to see it animated. And so now, after 5 hours of raw recording over multiple days, we are left with The Little Mermaid. The pacing of The Little Mermaid is slightly questionable in the sense that Ariel does not sing in the second half, and so they were a bit limited in terms of what they could have done. In a Broadway show, you can't do that, so they did have Ariel sing, but in her head. And I understand in the movie they may not have wanted to lessen the impact of Ariel losing her voice, voice, but also part of the themes of the movie is that Ariel is more than just her voice anyways, and so I feel like that becomes confusing, and the Broadway version made a stronger choice here with having her sing, especially Beyond My Wildest Dreams, because the idea is that even though we can hear Ariel, nobody else can hear Ariel, but yet she is still able to express to the other people around her how much this means to her without her voice. Like, we hear her voice, but they get her excitement, and like, that's the more important part of Ariel, right? Like, it's not just her beautiful singing voice, it's her personality that shines through, and how that personality shines when all the other characters don't hear what we're hearing. So in terms of my verdict on Ariel's second half as like a sort of aside, because obviously she does have a solo, so we're not really talking about her, I prefer what they did in the Broadway version and even in the live action with For the First Time. I really like For the First Time. I don't know if that's like a controversial opinion, but I really like how it explicitly points out how much Ariel sacrificed to be here, and it feels like that it more strongly mentions the barrier that she has to overcome, like with her and Eric, but also with herself. I think that she says at one point, like, come on, Ariel, like, take a stand, like, this is what you wanted, right? And so I feel like that gives us a roller coaster of emotions, whereas Beyond My Wildest Dreams is just excited. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I like both of those interpretations of the character. I like the Ariel that's like completely over the moon, consequences be damned because she deserves it, but I also like the Ariel that, like, because sometimes when we get what we want, it's scary. Kind of a tangent, but who cares? We have so much footage anyway. When I got into musical theater school, like, when I auditioned, I thought that is what I wanted, and like, in hindsight, yes, it was still what I wanted, but it was really fucking hard, right? And so I really relate to what Ariel in the live action version is singing about, because sometimes you get what you want, and that doesn't mean that suddenly everything is okay and suddenly everything is still easy. You are still fighting even when your dreams come true, and I think that was a really interesting idea. I will always have a yearning for more Ariel songs, but that completely aside, the only characters that don't have a solo song are Triton and Eric. In terms of Eric, I don't think that he really needs one as badly as like Jasmine or the Beast, but I do think that an Eric song could have clarified some things, and you guys may be saying at this point, it is bad to try to prevent discourse. Most of the discourse is in bad faith anyway, so why make a song to appeal to people that have zero media literacy skills? But even despite that, I do think it would have been beneficial because, like I said, musical theater songs are supposed to create clarity. And if there is enough of a misunderstanding, like, I can understand how some things with Eric aren't clear. Like, sure, there's some bad faith discourse, but there's also just, like, it kind of wasn't clear. A lot of the stuff with Eric is subtext. I can read between the lines here and understand that Eric, like Ariel, also feels out of place. I can see that he has these responsibilities as a prince, but he'd rather be out at sea. It's very, very subtle, like how Eric dresses. He doesn't dress like a prince until Ursula brainwashes him, and then suddenly he's in these fancy clothes. He doesn't like it when people call him Prince Eric. He doesn't like that formality. He works on the deck with all of the other men. He's not just, you know, kicking back and expecting them to do everything just because he's the prince. Like, he takes a leadership role in terms of presumably being the captain of the ship, but he also doesn't want any special treatment. So the implication is throughout the entire movie is Eric is also out of place. He doesn't want to be a prince. He wants something more than the box that he has been put in. I feel like whatever's going on outside is actually a great backing track to like my rage, my anger, my musical theater fury here, because musical theater is not like a read between the lines type of genre, okay? Like, yes, there is subtext, there is nuance, especially in the lyrics. A lot of stuff is up for analysis and interpretation, which is why we have this channel. But, like, the characters are literally singing their feelings to you, right? So remember, clarity and audience understanding above all else. We do not leave important details behind in the script. And unfortunately, that is where Eric's important characterization went to die. It's sometimes not even in the script. It's like, kind of like, again, subtext or like in the background of a scene or something. We don't just leave a man behind. We embellish those details through a song so they are easy to understand and remember. and also so we feel something about it. And the movie doesn't really make us feel for Eric, like try to. I don't know if it has to, but I feel like, again, it should have. And the Broadway musical solves this by giving Eric a ton of songs. Like, there's a better characterization of Eric in Fathoms Below. We also have her voice, which is much better than what they did in the live action version, but anyway, like, they also have a song while they're dancing together. They have a couple more songs after that. Like, he is treated like the dual protagonist. I wouldn't say that her voice is completely necessary to add into the movie, but if I could have it my way, I would have used the Fathoms Below that's like extended in the Broadway version, because this better sets up Eric's characterization, but also the conflict and the thesis of like the human versus mermaid situation. And the movie does it like a little. There's hints of that sort of like, oh, the mermaids are mysterious and like King Triton will drown you. So we do get the idea that Triton thinks that the humans are hostile to mermaids, but King Triton is hostile to humans. And so there's a conflict in that. But in the musical version, they specifically talk about like stories about mermaids drowning people. These two worlds intersecting together and then coming into peace. Like, that makes a lot more sense in the Broadway version, where I think in the animated version, the onus is put on the humans. Like, all the blame is put on the humans. Like, the mermaids take no blame into this, even though Triton's like drowning people. And of course, there are all these stories about mermaids eating people or something. Like, we don't know if that's true, but there's some stories about it and we don't get any clarification on that, so. But I do think that the song where Eric and Ariel are dancing was 100% necessary. I feel like it would have showcased how Eric is falling in love with Ariel, despite the fact that he doesn't think that she's the same girl who rescued him. And I would have appreciated the montage to like slow down a little bit and showcase that, especially when Ariel said that she wanted to dance. Like, that was like a big part of your world, like the jumping, dancing. And so this could be like, I know that she's seeing other things too, like chickens and whatever's going on, but like this could be the moment where we slow down and realize that Ariel's dream has really come true. And so I love that dancing number. I love the metaphor about how like dancing is sort of speaking without words, right? And that's him trying to understand her. I think all of that is just great. And obviously, again, these things happen during the montage. Like, we see them falling in love. We see Ariel jumping over the bridge, like in the horse buggy thingy, and Eric's like, hell yeah! Musicals again prioritize clarity, and a song here would have provided said clarity. Not throughout the whole montage, but in the dance sequence, I think that would have been nice. Like, why are we wasting time on Les Passants? Like, this is why I'll bring back that I'm a Les Passants hater. Why are we wasting time on the chef instead of giving them a song while they're dancing? They should have put a song here. There is no business. There is no reason the chef needs to sing. If I try to argue with myself, I could imagine that you could say that it reinforces the conflict between the humans and the merfolk, right? Like, this is what Sebastian and Triton were warning Ariel about, and it happened. But despite that, Sebastian comes around to Eric anyway. Eric isn't like the chef, and that creates contrast or whatever. But like, my beef with that is the point of the character arc that Sebastian and Triton both go through is that they learn to accept Ariel for who she is, and Sebastian encourages Triton to let her go. But like, Les Passants doesn't really have that much of a place in that. In my opinion, it's Eric's own actions which should be more convincing to Sebastian, especially Eric protecting Ariel when the boat tips, but then also like in the greater scene with Ursula. Like, if anything, that's kind of the point where they realize that Eric is a good person and not all humans are bad. So I feel like that an improved Fathoms Below would have done the conflict better than whatever Les Passants is doing. Now, you guys may also say that Les Passants is just a comedy song and it wasn't supposed to showcase the themes of the conflict, but I'm like, I don't want one. Put it away. I would rather have something that was really meaningful. Again, if we're talking about just time, I would rather the time have been used on Ariel and Eric's relationship instead of a comedy song. And also, like, this is the song that everybody skips. Nobody's listening to this. And so, yeah, I could maybe squint and see the argument for the themes, but I don't believe you. Like, I don't think that that's a good argument. And so let's move on. So my verdict on Eric is that yes, he should have had a song, it should have been where I said it should have been, and we can cut the chef song, we don't need it. And now, we talk about Triton, and like out of all of like, you know, making mountains out of molehills or whatever, like out of all of like the little complaints that I've had during the video, like this is the hill I will actually plant my flag and die on. People say that Ariel is a brat and that she doesn't learn anything, as if that's a valid criticism of The Little Mermaid, when the point of the movie is that Triton is actually the one that needs to learn the lesson here, not Ariel. The story is about Ariel, but the moral of the story is in regards to Triton. And I did make a whole video essay about that on my old channel, like when I used to do the animated movie video essays on there, and I want to remake it for this channel. So if you're interested in hearing more about that, you can go watch it, or you can wait until I fix it, because I will definitely talk about it again, because it drives me fucking crazy. Like, Ariel is constantly blamed by people for her behavior when every single adult in her life fails her. That's the only reason she turns to Ursula. People complain about Ariel changing herself for a man, but the conflict of the movie is how Triton and Sebastian refuse to accept Ariel for who she is. They are literally the men trying to change her, but just because Triton is her father, apparently that's okay, and Ariel is just, again, a brat. When she wants to change for a romantic partner, that's not okay. But when she needs to change for her father, apparently that's acceptable, but I don't think that any man should tell you who to be. Apparently that's a controversial opinion. And ultimately, I think that stems from the idea that children are still their parents' property, or that the parents have ownership of them. And so for a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, you know, you shouldn't change, you know, for a man, because we've gotten past the idea that men have any ownership of women, which is good, obviously. But what we have not gotten past is the idea that your parents have ownership of you, because parents do not want to give up that parental control. So what seems to go unnoticed in this changing for a man discourse is the fact that Ariel wanted to be on land before Eric, but also that Triton and Sebastian are literally the men trying to change her. Triton cannot understand Ariel despite Ariel using her voice, whereas Eric understands Ariel in spite of Ariel not having a voice. Eric embraces traits about Ariel that Sebastian and Triton discourage, like her adventuriness, which again, we see with, you know, going over the ravine in the little cart. I'm sure that Triton and Sebastian did not approve of that, but Eric likes that about her. He embraces her for who she truly is, and they both feel out of place and long for something more than the role that they were born into, with Eric being born as the prince and then Ariel being born as a mermaid. They both want to break out of the expectation that is set for them. And that's what really bothers me with the bad faith criticism of the movie, is that Ariel and Eric's relationship is built on mutual acceptance. Neither one of them changed for each other. They both were able to embrace the best parts of themselves. They were both able to be themselves around each other, whereas Ariel could never do that as a mermaid. So when we're talking about the musical, Triton has a song when he is destroying the things in Ariel's grotto. And I think the scene is so compelling, and especially because in musical theater, you know how they say, oh, you know, when a character can't speak anymore, they sing. When they can't sing anymore, they dance. I don't entirely agree with that, like a little bit. A little nugget of it is true. But I do think that Triton seeing the Eric statue is like the ultimate betrayal. And so if we are following that sort of rule, that would be enough to break him. That would make him so emotional that he bursts out into song instead of just yelling at her. I think it would also work because there is an emphasis on song during the movie, and so I feel like that it would be interesting because this would be Triton being like, this is the only way that I can get through to you is through song, and so I feel like that really works as well. And now in the musical, this is a reprise of an earlier song that Ariel sings called The World Above, and this happens before Part of Your World, but I believe after Fathoms Below, and so it kind of happens like as a precursor, like for Daughters of Triton, and like, oh my god, this is why I forgot about the concert and all of that stuff. And so the reprise in the grotto is like Triton is like, forget about that world above, okay? You're never going up there. Like, you will obey and do as I say. And I really like the World Above reprise and just the song as it is, but obviously that's not in the movie, and so what would I do instead in terms of the movie material? It could be a Daughters of Triton reprise reinforcing that Ariel is a daughter of Triton, therefore she will obey, or it could be a Part of Your World reprise where Triton does the same thing as World Above, it's just set to Part of Your World. So again, you will never be part of their world, you are part of this world, you will obey. Like, if we can add World Above in there, sure, but we can't have the World Above reprise without adding World Above proper. You guys understand what I'm saying? And I don't think that World Above really has a place in the movie, which is why I'm suggesting Part of Your World reprise, Daughters of Triton reprise, or you can just, like, give him his own song. Like, that's okay too. There is also a Triton song in the musical where he's part of a quartet, and this takes place during his "Oh God, what have I done" section. And again, that's a scene that happens like very fast, and so a lot of people don't even really like pay attention and take in what he said there when he's really regretting his actions. And I really like the quartet and how it intertwines everybody's own pain together. It's called If Only. So Triton is like, if only I had listened to her, if only I had been a better father. Like, that's basically what his plot line is. And so if we had a song like that, it would have been clear that Triton is in the wrong here. And I want to make sure you guys understand, like, this is not Triton slander, but Triton is the antagonist. Ursula is the villain, but Triton is the antagonist, and having a couple songs would have helped to punctuate his point in the arc that he is going through. And I feel like that would have helped in terms of the sympathy or lack thereof that people have for Ariel, you know what I mean? How people are not sympathetic to Ariel and think that Triton was right all along. If you had Triton go through the character arc where we clearly realize that he's wrong, the emotion that would have came through in the music would have been convincing to people. Music is just more convincing sometimes than the script. We're able to buy into it more, especially for a musical. And so I feel like if you had Triton singing sadly, it would almost be like impossible to ignore the feelings that come out of you from that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying it's necessarily trickery, but music can help facilitate the feeling of emotions. Your brain is wired to feel emotional by something sometimes. Even if you may not at first agree with actually like the lyrics of what is being said, the music in of itself can help sway you and convince you because, you know, there's a sensory element as well, not just like the intellectual element. And so when you have a song and it's filled with that yearning and that regret and that grief, it's almost impossible not to feel something, especially when the songwriters are really masterful. And so I think that that would have avoided some problems with the movie because we would have bought, I guess, we would have bought Triton's arc and we would have agreed that Triton was wrong. But some people don't buy that Triton was wrong, and that's a very big problem when the point of the movie is that Triton was wrong. All the lessons we learn by the time we get to she really does love him, doesn't she, Sebastian, are learned through the script, which we've talked about is a problem. If musical theater songs exist to create clarity, it is integral for the point of the movie, for Triton's thing to be crystal fucking clear, not to have the cameras like zooming away from him as he's like buried in his own regret and everything, and it's sort of just a moment that passes us by. Like, we need to focus on it. We need to live in Triton's grief to be able to feel it. And there is something I do have to note with The Little Mermaid, is that I love it dearly, and I don't think that it's the movie's fault. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. Is that like a parasocial thing to say? But what I mean by that is that we know that this movie was meddled with. They almost cut Part of Your World from the entire movie, which is the fucking heart of the movie, the thesis of the movie. When a creative team makes a bad creative decision, I criticize it harshly, right? But when I see corporate meddling, that's when I have a lot of sympathy for the creative team. And that's why, like, my verdict is yes, Triton 100% needed a fucking song, but I also do truly believe in my heart that it was prevented. Like, it was basically prevented from happening. This couldn't have happened because of the climate that the movie was made in at the time, like that Disney was already, like, on the brink of bankruptcy. So I don't think that they, again, would be too keen in Triton having his own musical number. So I guess I understand why it happened. And so even though Little Mermaid is my number one, I say that like kind of with the caveat that I think it was meddled with a lot. And so even though I really want that song, I don't think it was a creative oversight. I'm kind of sure that they wanted to do it. I'm kind of sure that they would have if they could have. And, you know, they did in the Broadway musical. We see evidence of them acknowledging that and trying to flesh that out out more. And those are my rankings and all of my verdicts of the songless Disney characters in the Disney princess movies. But what are our conclusions? Where do we go from here? As I said, I would love to argue with you guys in the comments about this. Like, I actually kind of want to fight, you know what I mean? Like, not in a bad way or anything, but just, it was so surprising to me that when I thought of this video idea, like, I tried to look online for, like, Reddit threads or YouTube videos, and I personally couldn't find anyone ever talking about this, and I think it's such an interesting thing to discuss from the perspective of people that like to really dig into the media that they like an analysis standpoint, right? But it's also such a good lesson as a creative. We learned so many storytelling lessons through looking at these individual cases, from when including a song can actually hurt the story, to when a song is necessary for the story, and how to discern that in your own work by thinking about what information is critical for the audience to understand, and also what emotional information you want your audience to receive. And so I hope not only that this was fun, but that it also helps you guys in your own storytelling and songwriting journeys. But when we talk about rewrites, no Disney movie needs more of a rewrite than Disney's Wish. And so I hope that you'll enjoy this video on, presumably, Welcome to Rosa's, as I rewrote the opening number and the plot for that one. And so I hope that you guys will enjoy that. This has been Calxiyn caring way too much, and I hope you care too, because this is the biggest video I have ever made, and I don't have any sponsor or anything for it. So it was really fun though. I'm really glad I did it. I hope you guys enjoy fighting it out in the comments, and I will see you next time. Bye!